Hello everyone and welcome to today's event, the first ever Purple Ribbon Awards Inspire webinar. My name is Ashley Rumschlag. I'm the CEO and president of Teresa's Fund, the 501c3 organization that operates domesticshelters.org. I'm joined today by Rachel Myers, our Senior Digital Services Specialist, Hannah Craig, our VP of Content, and Amanda Kippert, our Editor-in-Chief. We are so excited today to be hearing from so many of our 2022 Purple Ribbon Award winners. We've curated 3 different topics, including culturally specific programming, youth initiatives, and longevity in the domestic violence field. Each of these discussions was pre-recorded in order to accommodate so many very, very busy people's schedules. So we will provide a list of contact information for each of the panelists, just in case you have questions or if you would like to connect with them directly after this webinar. So let's dive in with a few housekeeping items before we get started. First off, live closed captionings are available. Just click the 3 dots in the menu bar and select Show Subtitles. You can also turn them off there if you'd like to. And some Zoom reminders. This is a Zoom webinar, so you are in listen-only mode. We do encourage you to use the chat to connect with other attendees and to share your thoughts throughout the webinar. But of course, as I mentioned before, the panels were pre-recorded, so we won't be doing a live Q&A like we normally do during our webinars. But like I said, I'll provide their contact information. So if you have questions, they've agreed to, of course, answer any questions and connect further with anyone who is interested. And then just a reminder, we will send a certificate of attendance, a transcript and recording, and like I said, the panelist contact information. We'll send all of that within 1 week of the presentation. Just a note, we will send individual certificates of attendance for each of the sessions. So if you're only able to stay for the first 2, or maybe you need to take a break in the middle, we'll send the appropriate certificates of attendance. And of course, if you would like to watch the replay, you can certainly access all of them at a later date. So we'll send that out, like I said, within a week of the presentation. And then if you are a call-in listener, so if you've dialed in today, so you're not listening on a computer, please send us an email to info@domesticshelters.org, and then we'll add you to that email list. All right, and also just a reminder that later today we'll be hosting the second ever Purple Ribbon Awards celebration. During this event, we're going to recognize all of our Purple Ribbon Award winners, as well as have some special guest presenters. And most exciting of all, we're going to reveal the winners of the $35,000 in grants. So 7 different organizations are going to be receiving grants, and that will be announced during that event. So we hope that you'll tune in. We'll drop a link in the chat to register if you haven't already. And that begins at 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern time. So about 45 minutes or so after we wrap up this event. And then just a quick overview of what today's agenda is going to look like. So you'll see here the timestamps approximately of when we will be starting each panel. We will be taking a short 5-minute break in between just for quick stretches and bathroom breaks, things like that. So just take note of that. We'll remind you of that agenda throughout in the chat. So that is what we're looking at here for today. But with that, let's go ahead and just get started with Hannah Craig, our VP of Content, who will be moderating the discussion with some of our winners who have some amazing insight on how to create culturally specific programming.
Thanks, Ashley. Today we're highlighting Purple Ribbon Award winners who offer and specialize in culturally specific, culturally sensitive, culturally humble. We have a lot about just what to call this that we'll talk about in a moment here, services. We're so thankful that you are all here to talk with us today about the importance of meeting all domestic violence victims and survivors where they're at and helping us all to learn to do that better. To start off with, I do want to address that there are so many different cultures and ways of being diverse that one 45-minute webinar is barely touching the tip of the iceberg. Today, we really want to focus on why this is so important and give you some ideas on how to start or improve your programs. So we're going to get started. I'd love to begin by learning a little bit more about all of our guests today. If you could tell us a bit about why you won your Purple Ribbon Award, who you are, and some of the work that your organization does. Nneka, would you mind going first?
Sure. Thank you so much, Hannah, and to all the team members for bestowing on us this incredible honor. My name is Nneka MacGregor, and I am the co-founder and executive director of a very unique organization. We're based out in Toronto, Ontario, called Women's Centre for Social Justice, but we're better known as Women at the Centre. Before I get into what we do, I want to start by doing a land acknowledgement to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from Indigenous land on Takaronto, which is the Indigenous name for it. Indigenous land belonging to the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Inuit, and many, many, many First Nations who've had custodial oversight of this country, of this land since time immemorial. And it's interesting that we're doing this, having this conversation, because our work at the organization is centered on intersectionality, is centered on putting in the middle, placing at the center, those who my brilliant colleague, Dr. Topoyade Farrakhan, who's also our board co-chair, she calls those on the margins of the margins. So individuals who are not being served, who have not been receiving service, who are the ones oftentimes in greatest need. And what makes the organization very unique is that we are by survivors. I'm a survivor of gender-based violence. The whole organization is our survivors of gender-based violence. And we're unique in that we use our lived experience as a way to bring about change, whether it's law reform, programs, and cultural shift in understanding of the world, and trying to figure out a way that we can live in a violence-free community. We submitted 3 awards, and we're very, very, very proud to win 2 golden ones. One for our C6 program, which is our peer-based counseling support program, which is absolutely brilliant. So we're very, very grateful about that. And then we also won for our Share Her Story, Say Her Name, which is our campaign on Black femicide. So the killings, missing and murdered Black women, Black girls, and Black gender diverse people, which in the Canadian context is not talked about at all. Nobody's sort of doing anything around the experiences of Black women, Black girls, and Black gender diverse people, especially Black trans women. So that campaign was something that was really, really dear to our heart, as a way to shine the light on a community that was, again, sidelined and side-margined. And then the 3rd award was for one of our brilliant, brilliant chapter co-chairs, whose name is Rifa Carter, who's been doing community-based activism for years. And there are so many survivors doing this work, but we wanted to sort of shine the light on Rifa. And so she got a certificate of acknowledgement. That's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on those wins. It's very well deserved. I had the privilege of looking through many of our nominations this year, and I will say I do not envy those who are on our judges panel, because it is incredibly difficult to make these decisions, because honestly, anyone who works in the field is worthy of more recognition than anyone gets.
Agreed.
Samantha, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Hannah. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Salamon. I have a lot of hats, but I work for an agency called Asian Services in Action. We're based out of Northeast Ohio. We actually have 2 different locations here. What I do here is I'm the manager of our legal services here, and I'm also the manager of our Ahimsa services, or what we identify as our domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking department. So what's a little bit niche about what we do at Asia is we're a multi-sector or multi-department social service agency. But what we do is we focus on the immigrant and refugee communities throughout Northeast Ohio, or Ohio in general, depending upon the situation. And what we had the honor of getting the Most Innovative Service Award from Domestic Shelters, which we're super excited about. And that award is based off of our working together. I told you I wear a few hats, working together of our legal services and our advocacy services. So what's so cool about our advocacy services is we actually hire members from the immigrant and refugee communities that we serve. The idea is not to only help with the linguistic barrier that a lot of survivors face in any, victim service agency, but it's also to help bridge that cultural gap as well, that a lot of survivors go to mainstream service agencies and they just don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so having individuals from the communities that we serve these survivors not only helps with breaking that gap of wanting to be able to speak about your situation, probably one of the most worst situations you've ever been in your life, in your own mother language, but then it's also that comfort of being able to talk to somebody who will understand you a little bit more. So it's not only offering those advocacy services, but it's also that connection between our advocacy services and our legal services, and how we appoint one attorney to help with that survivor in every legal issue that they have that is a direct result of their victimization, whether that be helping with immigration, because obviously when working with the immigrant and refugee communities, immigration is a top concern, and that actually is a way of victimization that we're noticing is more prevalent now than ever. But then also we help with getting protection orders, helping with divorce, helping with child support, helping with custody, helping with if you are identified as a victim in a criminal case under Marcy's law, we are able to actually represent a survivor in that situation as well. But one thing that we've recognized throughout this work is the legal representation is empowering, knowing that you have an attorney that can help you speak your story and do it in a way that they'll understand than what the legal system needs. But also it's the idea that the most empowering aspect is being able to educate. And that is one major gap that we're recognizing within the immigrant and refugee communities is their rights and understanding what their rights are and how to make sure that their rights are actually being enforced. My story comes really unique in the sense where I myself used to be an immigrant. I lived in the Middle East for a few years. And despite having a law degree, despite being an independent, strong woman in the US, when I lived in Dubai for a few years. And when I lived there, I recognized that despite my intelligence, despite what my career choice was, I didn't understand how to live there. I didn't understand what it was like to be not of the mainstream there. So when I came back, that's why I had the passion of really helping the most vulnerable communities that I see, and those are immigrants and refugees within the United States. So without further ado, that's my background and that's who I am and what I do.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Asma, would you mind going next, please?
Okay, yes, I'm Asma and Hanif. I'm the executive director and founder of Inge Benevolent Ministries and Muslimat Nisaa shelter. And our organization, I was very honored and shocked that we received the Community Service Organization of the Year. I was like, wow, to be able to, for, I won't say little old me, but for, just a, grassroots organization, to be able to receive such an honor. I was totally amazed. And one of the things about Muslimat Nisaa and myself, I like to also share that I am the daughter of John T. Inge. He was one of the original Muffled Point Marines. And it was his work and his service and his sacrifice on behalf of others that made this place, amenable for those who were immigrating and coming, to this country. Because the thing about the Muffled Point Marines, they actually immigrated the Marines. They came in before, his particular platoon came. They didn't they never had African Americans to even be a part of it. So he started out, wanting to be able to make a difference. And to be able to be, of course, they had to be the best of the best of the best. So that is the legacy that I have to always follow behind. And when I think about, people ask me what was the reason for starting, even Muslimat Nisaa shelter. Well, it started for myself as I grew up in the South, and I had a very impoverished background. In fact, my mother was the first one to even graduate from high school. And I was the first one to graduate from college. And in fact, she said to me, when I graduated from high school, she says, oh, well, you didn't do nothing. I did that. She said, you know what? She said, get back to me when you graduate from college. And so, so I ended up going to, and the other thing too, was that with my grandmother, and this is why this is significant for me, is that my grandmother, down south, most of the people worked either in other, as what I call maid slaves, in other people's houses, or they, pick cotton and pick tobacco. So my grandmother was one of those who were actually worked for a physician, in the South from sun up to sundown. And in fact, I never saw my grandmother sleep. I never saw her sleep. And one day she went to him and she told him that she felt something that was like the size of a green pea, really tiny, in her side. And he told her, don't worry about it. It will never amount to anything. And 5 years later, that had turned into the cancer that she died from. But she started, in fact, she didn't even stop working until she was in such excruciating pain that she couldn't work anymore. And, because, for cancer to go from that size to where it just, consumes your body, 5 years is about the time frame. And what I remember is that they sent my grandmother to a teaching hospital where they just opened her up, practiced, doing surgery on her, and then they stitched her back up and sent her home to die. That's basically what happened. And I was like very sad. And my mother told me, when I told my mother how I felt, because I was very close to my grandmother, my mother told me, she says, go to school to be a nurse. She said, because when people are hurting, they don't care what color you are. And that's the reason why I actually went to Howard, I ended up going to Howard, Howard University. And my goal was to be able to establish a health center for people like my grandmother, people who, didn't matter to society. So she had no status, she had no health insurance, she had no, nothing. She had no resources. So she was, totally, dispensable. When she died, he just got someone else. And that was where my my original concept of wanting to be able to establish a health center came from. And it was in this, and while I was at Howard, I did come in contact with individuals who were from other countries. And now again, they're in a teaching hospital. And one of the things that, especially as immigrant, Muslim women, they wanted to, they like their, they want to be examined by a male. It was a very, simple request, but because it was a teaching hospital, then they didn't get those requests at all. And so then I said, okay, I had to be able to add that to my health center, that I would be sensitive to the needs of people from other cultures who may have those as requests. And so I ended up establishing Ahimsa Healthy Solutions, which Ahimsa just means, the women. And just to, move this along a little bit more, is that one day I would have the women woman came to me and she didn't have any insurance. And I never humiliated anybody for not having any insurance. In fact, I would say that Blue Cross Blue Shield would be sitting next to, if you was just an immigrant person who was homeless, who didn't have anything. It didn't really matter, because I wanted to care for people like my grandmother. And what ended up happening is that she came, I took her to the back to be able to do an exam, because I'm a nurse practitioner, to do her female health exam, and her husband wanted to come with her, who had brought her. And then he said to me, he says, well, I want to be in the room with her. And of course, the law is that, if he says yes, he wants to, and she doesn't complain, then you have to, he could stay. But then I thought that was very strange. So I said, okay, what male want to be in the room with a woman having a pap smear? I mean, so I thought it was odd. But by the time I finished, giving all the instructions and putting out, speculums and this and that, he said, I think I'll just go sit back up front. And I said, of course you will. And this is what was significant. For the first time in this woman's life, she was alone with someone she could trust. And I discovered that she was a victim of domestic violence. And so I tell people, I did not go into this, as already knowing about it. I said, I backed into it. And for whatever reason, maybe he told all his other, abusive, individuals about me. So I ended up getting a large number of women, from other countries who were victims of domestic violence, to the point that I said, what can I do? So the part for anybody that's a medical person, I said I would try to think of reasons to bring her back to the office. So I would make up diseases to say, say she hasn't come back. So I said, well, yeah, you have to bring her back because she got monodiglycerized vaginosis and encephalitis. Sounds like something she's gonna die from, doesn't it? And so they would be like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna bring her back. And they would do that. And I said, okay, well, I gotta see if she's treated. I kept doing these things. And then that's when I realized I was just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. And I had to establish a shelter, for these women, rather than just keep saying, because if you don't have a solution, then, that's all you're doing is putting a Band-Aid. And the last part that I wanted to share is that I did not establish the shelter for Muslim women to be discriminatory. It was because when they went to these other places, how they were mistreated. Because I didn't want to do it. I wasn't trying to have a shelter. They were being mistreated. And one of the things that was said to them is that you are a part of that religion that says it's okay to beat women. So therefore, if you want us to help you, you have to stop practicing your religion and accept ours. And I said, you know what? You shouldn't have to sell your soul for a safe place to live. And I thank y'all for having me here.
Oh, I thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story with us. I was getting a little choked up listening. I realized that as we got started, I completely forgot to introduce myself. My name is Hannah Goldberg-Craig. I am the Vice President of Content here at domesticshelters.org. So I want to get into our conversation. And I think it's really important to start out with a really fundamental question. Why is being sensitive or humble towards cultural diversity so important to the work of domestic violence?
I can start.
Well, I went first, so somebody else.
Not a problem. I can start. I think it's actually extremely straightforward and easy in the fact that you can't help somebody unless you understand what they're going through. And you can't understand what they're going through unless you understand the whole situation, and that includes culture. This idea of culture, people really undermine the importance of it. And it's actually quite, it just shows how naive so many people are and how culture plays a tremendous impact in everything that we do. The way that we look, the way that we do our hair, the way that we speak, the way that we make decisions, the way that we, come together as a community and what's important, what's a priority of ours. All of these are based upon what our culture is like. And if you as a victim service provider, by definition, we're already here. We have empathetic hearts. We want to help. And the fact is, though, if you aren't looking at the cultural aspect of every survivor that's coming through your doors, you might do more harm than good. And the fact is in working with vulnerable communities such as the immigrant and refugee communities, one massive thing that is part of the individual situation is their immigration status. And if you are not a US citizen and a victim comes to you and they say, I need help, can you get me onto Section 8 housing? Well, about a year and a half ago, if you have done that, you could have made them deportable. And it just depends. And so this all goes back to the idea of caring for the holistic individual. And part of that holistic individual is their culture, which will then ultimately lead to what the victim or what the survivor would deem as seeking justice in their situation. Because at the end of the day, don't we all just want survivors to be able to heal, to get back on their own 2 feet, and to be safe at the end of the day? And if we are doing that, the only way we can proactively do that is if we are helping and accepting the survivor for who they are, what their background is, and then helping them prosper in whatever path they choose. So that's my reason as to why it's so important.
I think that is absolutely beautifully put.
And when I first got into the whole, wanting to study and learn more in terms of domestic violence, I attended a lot of meetings or sessions where most of the people that was there were, social workers. They were social workers, and they would talk about, the whole issue of domestic violence. Now, remember, I have a shelter where I actually, it's not government funded. It's just me, using whatever resources I have to be able to provide this home. And I live there as well. So I have a close relationship, very intimate relationship with the women. So I'm in this meeting trying to be able to get more information. And I would hear the professionals. Remember, I'm already a nurse, though, but the professionals saying, well, what we have to do, we have to empower the women so that they would go and make sure that they go and, and take him to court so he could go to prison for what he did. Or we have to empower the women so they can walk away, and they could, they would just talk about all of the things, that what they were going to do for the women. And then I'm thinking that, and again, when we're talking about, being, and in this instance, I absolutely accept, the cultural, humbleness and humility, because I actually raised my hand, the most, the only one that in there that's a nurse, all right? And I said, basically, excuse me, and it was like, well, what do you want? They were looking at me that way. I says, I listened to all of the things that you're saying that you're going to empower the women to do. I says, all you're doing, in my opinion, is removing one type of oppression for another type of oppression, because you're telling them what they need to do. I says, and based on my understanding of the women, I said, you know what? They don't want those things. I says, they love him. They just want him to stop beating them. I said, and what you're doing is, I says, you're superimposing, your obsession of what needs to be done. And so then I established this mantra at that time. I says, no. I says, well, we, as the ones who care about them, have to do. We have to accept and respect their right to make a wrong decision. We have to do that. And then eventually they will come around to one that is for them, which is why, some people will go, come back, or never leave or whatever. We have to respect that and not, superimpose ourselves into their lives in that way.
I really loved everything that's been said. And I completely agree with both Samantha and Asma. I come at this from a slightly different perspective, because when I think of culture, when the mainstream talks about culture, it's as if it's something that other people have and the mainstream itself doesn't. Yeah. There is a Western culture that we are all living under. And usually the elephant in the room is not to talk about that Western culture and its role in creating violence, perpetuating violence against women, children, and gender diverse people. So I tend to disrupt the notion of what culture is, right? My team and I, we talk about this all the time, and start by centering the fact that there's a multiplicity, right? Just like there are many identities, there's a multiplicity of cultures. And what the mainstream does really well is hide in plain sight and think it's others, right? Other people's culture is a problem, other people's culture is an issue. But we have to talk about the culture that we live under that is perpetuating the violence, and look at ways that we can, again, disrupt that and reconstruct one where there is the humility and the respect. The reason why it's important for us, and I talked in my introduction about Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality, which is, I found, a brilliant framework, but is one that's being bandied around by lots and lots of people in the gender-based violence sector. We have to be intersectional, we have to be intersectional. And yet their framework and their lens and their practices are not intersectional at all. It doesn't center, and Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, for those who don't know, is a Black legal scholar who talked about the identity, right? Black women being in what it means to be in bodies like ours, and how that intersection of being Black, anti-Black racism, and a woman, misogyny, really, really does tremendous damage, and goes back to Asma's conversation about her grandmother. It's such a common everyday experience by so many Black women who have not received the best attention from the medical profession, the best attention from the legal the best attention from, social services. And so for us and my organization, what it means to be I'm the founder and I'm a Black woman. And I look around at the sector. I didn't come from social services. I was in business. I'm a lawyer in my background, but I was in business. And when I entered the gender-based violence sector, I had a certain degree of naivety because I thought, they're all feminists. Everybody there is a feminist. We're gonna be hanging out, the sisters, and it's gonna be great. And it was very, very violent. The lateral violence that was there, again, based on the culture in the sector, right? So for me, walking in as this Black woman who then wore the fact that I'm a survivor of intimate partner violence, I'm not ashamed of it. I was never ashamed of it because I didn't see myself as having done anything wrong. So I walk into these spaces wearing the S on my chest, like it's Superwoman, right? That's my S on my chest. And it shook people because again, it was trying to disrupt the culture in the gender-based violence sector. And then, so as a survivor, as a Black woman, as the executive director, stepping into these spaces where oftentimes I am the only one. I'm the only Black woman in that sort of high level of management. I swore very early on that what cultural sensitivity, what cultural humility, what cultural respect looks like is that any survivor that joins the organization is going to see themselves reflected in the people, in the staff, in the board, in the chapters, in the work. Because there is nothing worse than being a Black woman, going out looking for services, and everybody who you're expecting, everybody working in these organizations that you're expecting to be feminist and, kind, and are actually perpetrating a different type of violence against you because of your race, because of your color, because of your, it could be trans women, which is another huge part of our work, right? Trying to ensure that trans people have equitable rights to services because they deserve it, because it's a human rights issue. So for me, what it means, that cultural component, is that people need to see themselves reflected in leadership. They need to see themselves reflected in the service delivery parties, in people that are delivering services. They need to see themselves reflected, not just in the ideas that are being created on how the programs that we won for, as well as the other incredible stuff that my team and I are doing. It's all grounded in the lived experiences of survivors. And as Asma was saying about our expertise, I am the expert. I am the expert because I lived it. And not only did I live it, but I have analyzed, I have learned lessons, and I can tell you, I can tell people with PhDs, although there are many of them who are my closest friends, including PhDs who are survivors. But our expertise is what is informing the way things can be done differently and be done better. But it can only be done if we adopt this intersectional approach where you respect people and the identities that they walk in, and respect that they know they know the truth of their realities. You don't need to tell survivors what they need. Survivors need to tell you, and you need to listen. Right, so I love the work that my colleagues are doing, because it is about centering people's identities and respecting and being humble. But again, what organizations need to do is not have, white women leading organizations in communities that are serving Black or Indigenous or, step aside and let the people who are experiencing this, who have an understanding of it, take the lead. That to me is a huge part. It's like saying to men, you can't have a man leading a women's organization as much as they like to, but you don't understand. You don't understand. So use your power and uplift others who are the recipients of the service, who are the individuals who understand their communities, and get them into those spaces, because that is a practical, tangible way of getting informed decisions, informed programs that are really, really going to transform lives.
Thank you. So, oh, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Well, because when I was talking about the cultural, sensitivity, one of the things that I actually want to add to that, based on just what my beloved sister was saying, is that living in the house with the individuals, that's the reason why I said I learned everything from them, because I did not know. I was totally naive, and I could, I won't take time, in this panel to talk about, the incidences in life where I knew that someone was a victim of domestic violence, but we paid no attention. But in this home, and I actually call this my Kit Kat story. There was a woman that came there, and she was an immigrant woman, and she had 2 children. She had a little girl that was like 7 and a little boy that was 3. Now, before this time, I used to, my goal was I'm going to, eliminate domestic violence. In the community. I had this great goal that was what I was going to do. I said I was going to eliminate it. So then anyway, this woman came, she was being beaten by her husband, and her neighbor heard her screaming, called the police. The police brought her to Muslimat Ahimsa, shelter. They brought her there. And I can remember that she woke me up one morning while she was there, and she said, I need a Kit Kat. I need a Kit Kat. I'm trying to think, okay, somebody died, but I couldn't understand her language that well, right? So I'm thinking maybe somebody is diabetic and that she needed some candy, because this is like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then what I saw was her little 2 or 3-year-old son. He was kicking her and asking for a Kit Kat. The other little girl and her daughter was just in the background watching. And this is when I came to the realization. I said, I cannot eliminate. I don't have the authority or the power to eliminate domestic violence in the community, because the abusers of tomorrow are already born. I remember saying that to myself, because what this young boy had learned in his household, that he could beat his mother. Okay, this little boy, that he could beat with his mother would be okay. And the daughter was there viewing it from the perspective that this is our lot in life. This is our lot in life. Now, moving that story just a little bit further, her parents called me. Her mother called me and said, I wanted to come and visit, my daughter and my grandchildren. All right, this is me being a newbie in the whole thing, with domestic violence. And so I said, okay. So I told them, that yes, they could come, because her husband was going to go to, had a court date. So, they wanted to come and visit her in the shelter. They come there and they bring her nice little cookies and sweets from back home, and and they're being all talking all kind to her. And something that I realized when we're talking about knowing someone's culture, they were not there to soothe her. They were there to convince her to drop the charges against her husband, because as a part of their culture, a woman can marry her cousin, right? And so she was married to her cousin, which is what? Her brother's, her father's brother's child. You see what I'm saying? So they had a relationship. They were more concerned about, he was more concerned about his brother than he was about his daughter. And that right there was a major eye-opening for me relative to someone's culture, because had I known that in advance, I would have not allowed them to come. I would not let them have that effect. And she did. I don't know what happened. I'm sure they convinced her to drop the charges. So she maybe was someplace, she had to go back into that situation, because something that a lot of the Pakistani women tell me, they said in their culture, it's better to be dead than divorced. And I would have never thought that. So I understand about learning, like being in the company of the individuals and learning and being sensitive, because I didn't start out being sensitive or humble, because remember, I'm going to be the savior of all victims of domestic violence. I didn't start out that way, but being there, as Nneka was saying, that you have to know the situation, in order to do what's best in the best interest of the women.
Can I just say something again? Because this is the beautiful thing about the conversation, is one person says something and it opens something in someone else. And it is, again, on culture, how there is oftentimes sort of a judgment of some sort, right? That society, the mainstream, again, imposes on people. And so, for example, the Pakistani example of marrying cousins, the Queen of England married her cousin, right? So it is, when it's said in a way that there are some people in the mainstream who will think, those people, this is what they do, they marry. And so to me, it's really important to call in the fact that these practices are very, very common, even in the West, right? Because the Queen is being buried today, and and nobody talks about that in any negative way. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I completely agree with you, and I love the fact, Asma, that you have been present. You're present. You're bearing witness to the trauma that the survivors are facing, and because of you bearing witness, you're able to adapt and adopt new ways of supporting based on being informed. So kudos, love it.
Well, I do have to say that my issue was not against her marrying her cousin. It was against her father, showing preference for what happened to his, his brother's child's well-being than his own child.
Own daughter. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But I was saying that because there might be people listening.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
In the audience thinking, those people, right?
And if I can step in here, I completely agree. Just kind of keep going. You brought up a really awesome point that a lot of people don't really comprehend the importance of, is the trauma. And it's not just trauma, it's complex trauma. It's trauma on top of trauma. And especially when you're dealing with certain communities, again, I'm coming at this from the immigrant and refugee communities. But, it is a traumatic experience going to a new country and not knowing many people, or not knowing the language, not knowing the laws. That's a trauma in and of itself. Being displaced from your home country, that's a trauma. But then on top of that, before you can even learn to cope with that trauma, then the domestic violence starts. Whether it be due to addiction issues that are common with certain communities, whether it be with, that's just how that's just how individuals were raised, and that's what their gender norms are for that community. And the idea of being able to, I can't tell you how many individuals in the past couple years have come to me, and they've never wanted to get law enforcement involved, never wanted to get the police involved, but they did want their story heard, and they did want some sort of justice. And so the idea is, not only did we have to work through that immediate trauma that just occurred, but ultimately that was not the actual healing factor. The healing factor was being able to not only speak about what happened and being able to process it, but then also standing on your own 2 feet and being able to approach that individual. This idea of things like restorative justice, this is kind of a nuanced type of idea that is very underrated, but is so incredibly important in so many cultures, because in their home country, that's how they resolve problems. And that is, there are issues that a lot of people don't really think about, are very Western, like the family name or the honor. But then we look at so many families like the Kennedys or the Clintons or other individuals that have very prominent names, whereby their honor is just as important as anyone else's honor from various communities. But I love the idea of thinking that, these things are not here. They're not in the West, but they're so prominent in the West, but we're just so used to them. We're not actually able to identify what they are until we hit that comparison with another culture and seeing it actually work itself out in a different format or with somebody else, because it's not here, it's not us, but it completely is us as well. So I just thought I wanted to add that point.
I think that's a fantastic point. And I mean, to be honest, I think especially in Western culture, it's very easy to say, those people, because they don't look like us, or they don't look like me and my family, or they don't look like the Queen of England or whatever. So there is that othering that makes it so easy to say, well, it's not here, and put on sort of blinders to what is here. So, the next question that I was going to ask, and I think this will be sort of our last topic as we're about to hit time, but I feel like this was sort of a naive question for me to write when I was first kind of putting our agenda together, because with the idea of there being so many different cultures and ways of being diverse, because of course today we're just talking about cultural diversity, and as I said, that's barely touching the iceberg. My question was going to be, how can we strive to meet the needs of everyone who accesses our service? But I think maybe a better question at this point, after everything we've discussed, is how do we think of the best way to put this? Where do we know the line between offering support and services that we have and listening and understanding and respecting clients what they are asking for? Where is that line? How do we help best? How do we meet them the best where they are at? Because it's coming to me from what all three of you are talking about, is that listening to what they are telling us is so important, and that there is a lot of problems with people not listening or putting their own biases and judgments on a situation. I hope that question makes sense.
It does make sense. And I could actually think of two examples, and when that actually occurred, and there was again, another immigrant woman, and her husband was constantly abusing her. She had 2 daughters, and he was constantly abusing her. And people called me, and he would just beat her up and then put her out, outside if it was cold or whatever. And they called me and they said, Asma, they said, you need to go. He's been doing this for her for a long time. So she needs some help. Please go. Put her, let her be in your shelter. So I go to the woman, right? And I was telling her, I have a shelter, you can stay there until such time as you can become self-sufficient. You can, that it's, it's, exclusively, it was for Muslim women, so you could feel comfortable, all of these things. This mother said to me, she said that I have 2 daughters. She says, if I'm not there, he will beat and molest them. She says, so I will stay there. So as a mother, she sacrificed whatever it was that, that he was doing to her in order to protect her girls. She says, I'm there to protect my girls. And I gave her a hug, and I said, as a mother, I understand. And I left her to, because she was making a decision that somebody else, for those times that people knew about it, they were calling the police, they were doing all of the other different things. But she had an absolute valid reason for doing what she did. And so we fail to take this into consideration as to why somebody might decide that they are not going to leave. And then even with the other women that will come, and they are victims of domestic violence. And I had a law office that was willing to be able to provide free legal services, because I don't have staff, so I was happy, right? Well, a lot of the women, they would not take part of the legal services. And so, and I'm like, wait a minute, now you're trying to get a protective order, you need all these things, why are you not? And it was because they were where they were raised. In order to be able to obtain the legal services, they had to then identify who their husband was and what he had done to them. And in their culture, you can't do that. So they did not get they weren't able to get it because, and the only reason why the law office wanted it, it wasn't to be able to, go after the man. It was because they wanted to make sure that there was not, to not violate, like have a conflict of interest. It's just in case he was also a client of theirs. I tried to explain that to them. They didn't care, because what was important, in terms of their culture, you cannot do this. You cannot say these things about him, even if you were brave enough to leave. So these are 2 such instances where I know that I had to respect what it was that, based on their culture and how they were raised, right? And leave it be, and just do what I could do, which was to provide a safe place for them to live if they need it, and as well as the other, woman, to respect her right to make this decision that she had made.
I love that. I really, really love and respect that. And sort of taken off from that, as well as a point that Samantha raised around restorative justice. For us, it is about survivors. It's all about us. But it's not just about us and our, as you said, Asma, our right to live violent-free lives, but for our children. And so one of the programs, one of the projects that we had was we got funded by the Canadian federal government to find an alternative model of justice for survivors of gender-based sexual violence. And we did 3 years research participatory research with survivors. We interviewed survivors who'd been raped and had reported to the criminal legal system. We interviewed survivors who'd been raped and didn't report. And to your point, Asma, in the ones who reported to police and went through courts and stuff, there wasn't one Black woman in that group. And all of that stuff was being done around the time of Tarana Burke and Me Too movement. Black women were finding other spaces to share their trauma. But we found Black women were in the group that had been raped and didn't report. And one of the things that we did was secondary research. So we looked at other jurisdictions to find out what other people were doing, what other countries, other jurisdictions were doing around alternative models, because the criminal legal system is a very violent space. It is a very violent space for some more than others. And the some being Black, Indigenous, right, individuals who receive harsher sentences, the book thrown at them. So one of the things that we found was actually in the States, transformative justice that was started by Black women, right? Black women activists like Dr. Beth Ritchie and Mimi Kim, who were looking at community accountability, because survivors were saying, this is better for us. If we report to the police, knowing that the police is a bastion of white supremacy, knowing that the police is a state-run institution that violates Black men, Black women, Black children, Black boys, Black girls, the last thing Black women want to do is to hand over their sons, their partners to this racist institution. So finding an alternative that was based in the community was how transformative justice, I'm putting it like in very, very brief, it's deeper than that, but that's how transformative justice was formed. Community asking survivors, by survivors and for survivors. And so we, at my organization, we do work on anti-human trafficking, run by human trafficking survivors, who are the coordinators, the managers, etc. We do work on alternative models of justice, again, run by survivors of sexual violence. And it's based on the transformative a model that we adopted and adapted from transformative justice. It's called Transformative Accountability and Justice. And it is about centering the survivor with love and kindness and compassion, because that's what we want. I'm a survivor, that's what I want. And that's what we heard from other survivors. But we also heard that the work needs to, if we're going to disrupt and reconstruct society, we can't just focus on us survivors. We need to focus on the men who have caused the violence. We need to figure out a way to also wrap them with love and kindness and compassion. Because if we throw men away, if we put them in jail and in that cell, nothing changes. They'll come out in years. We've seen an increase in incel. We've seen an increase during the COVID pandemic, rise in horrific violence. And so figuring out a way to be culturally sensitive, now it's about the gender and it's not about the binary, but cultural sensitivity that looks at human beings as human beings, and we wrap with love and kindness and compassion, and we educate and we interrupt and we hug and we show up and we constantly do that. Because to Asma's, the experience that you shared about the woman and her son kicking her, the only way that little boy is going to grow up differently. Only way is if we all wrap him, we all step in and not just support his mum and his sister, but support him to do things differently. That's how culture changes, regardless of whether you're in the West or you're in Nigeria, where I'm from. That's how culture changes. All of us who know better, who know, should be shouting this type of stuff from megaphones and rooftops, etc., because that's the only way we're going to create a different way of being in the world and of treating each other.
And I'll go, and I guess I'll wrap it up a little bit. You know, right now, we are in a very unique time, in the sense where we're recognizing how important a voice is, whether that voice is for your rights in employment, whether that's your voice in making medical decisions for your body. We're recognizing, or whether that's your voice in voting. And so, you know, I think at the end of the day, it all goes to the idea of one of the major things that happens in almost all victimizations is the suppression of someone's voice, the suppression of someone's ability to choose. And so when it comes to ultimately helping, the key factor is when serving anybody, whether it's a mainstream survivor, a immigrant or a refugee, or another multiple or minority or vulnerable community, is we have to hear their voice. And we have to hear where they're coming from. And like Asma said, we have to learn to respect that. And the fact is that I have had multiple clients have completely gone against everything of my legal advice could possibly give. And you know what? The best piece of advice after they made their decision is, we're always here. And we're always going to be here. And we're not going to judge you, but we are always going to be here no matter what decision that you're going to make. And the idea that, you know, in that particular situation that Asma was talking about staying to protect their daughters. And I mean, victims in general go through that no matter in anywhere in this world, whether you are a female victim, a male victim, LGBTQ victim, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, everybody is going to have their own issues and their own reasons as to why they're doing what they're doing. And so again, that's why it always goes to the core value of, are we listening to their voice? And are we uplifting their voice so they have the ability of saying and figuring out for themselves what's best? You know, I can't tell you how many times, again, I keep hearing other victim service agencies saying, well, we need to get this, we need to get this, we need to get this. And it's just, that just doesn't work with everybody. There is no way, there's no stereotypical template way of handling situations. And that's what cultural sensitivity is all about. It's never doing that template, boilerplate way of providing services to survivors, because every survivor is unique. And no matter how much that survivor talks to you or discloses to you, you will never understand what that survivor is going through. And you have to trust that. You have to trust that it's the survivor that understands their situation the best, and that they are going to make the best decision for themselves. And you can provide all the resources you possibly can for them. But the most important thing is so that they always know that they can walk through your door no matter what happens, no matter what decision that they make. So, you know, one thing I just keep encouraging, because it gets very frustrating, I'm going to be honest, how many people have had survivors that have gone back to their abuser, have gone back to their trafficker, has, you know, and you just want to say, I just want to help you. But we have to remember that that's our want. That's not focusing on the survivor again. And that's when we start again looking at more of what our needs are. And that's when we have to dive deep into us and saying, wait a minute, I have to put the brakes on, because that's mine. That's me emotion. That's not a them need. And so again, it is actually as basic as it sounds. It's really listening and really putting the survivor's voice first and making sure that you're humble enough to respect that you don't know everything. You'll never know everything, but you can advise and give as many resources as you possibly can.
I'd like to say something relative to the award and why it was so important when you talk about, we said, terms of being culturally sensitive, even to this work that I'm doing. And I know, Nneka was talking about, but as an African American, for me to have been doing this work for 45 years without government funding, with just a minor number of people keeping helping with the donations, and having to purchase a house, for money from the death of my mother. I think about those organizations that have major funding, and have, like lots of houses that can give people so much more. And why this caused my heart to hurt is because 3 things that I have been told as to why I don't get it, that money, and that's why I said the recognition means so much, because they say that I'm, an African American. I actually protect victims of domestic violence within a faith tradition where that is an issue, all right? And I'm being a Muslim. These are things that when people, when they look at the grant writers, because I don't have staff, or they look at the grant writers, or they see things on paper. See, I may not look good to people on paper, but I'm saying you can't be doing something for 45 years and not be, legitimate, have been doing something right, had a handhold to God, or at least being a service. So the people, I'm so grateful that this organization has recognized me, because maybe, just maybe, those people who look down at me for what I do will feel as if, this provides some kind of legitimacy. And so it helps my heart. It helps my heart a lot to have received this award. Thank you. Okay, I'm a crier, so don't.
No, it's contagious.
Okay.
No, and that's why we do the PRAs, because it really is, there's so much incredibly difficult work in this field. We all see it every day. I'm not a direct service provider, but even I get emails that break my heart constantly. And it takes something incredible within someone to do this for 45 years. It takes something incredible within somebody, I think, to do it for a year, because it is so hard, and it is so important to be able to put your own judgments and values and what you think is right for this person to do to the side, to be able to recognize, respect, be non-judgmental, and like Nneka said, hug them and wrap them in love. I think that's such a beautiful way to put it, because I spoke a lot today when I was putting my agenda together. I'm just thinking like actionable tips. What can people walk away with? But I think that it is bigger than like, a phone number to call, or a website to check out, or a program, or training. It really is about these fundamental ideas about how we approach the work, how we approach helping victim survivors, and also how we approach our own egos within the work and what we want to do, and how we can make change, as Nneka was speaking to, how we can make change, but still make that change centered around the survivors and keep their voices, as Samantha was talking to, the ones that are being heard. And I want to just thank you all so much for being here and talking to me today, and for covering this topic, because it's not an easy topic. It's not like I think it's a very intimidating one to a lot of people. I think, as a Jewish white woman, I can say it's an intimidating one for me sometimes. I don't want to screw up. I don't want to make anybody upset, but we can't do better if we don't have the conversations. So to anybody who looks a little bit like me, I would very strongly encourage you to ask, to talk, to listen, because we cannot do better unless we have some type of understanding and unless we are listening to the people who have lived these experiences. Because at the end of the day, these experiences are what make us people, and what make everyone who we are is where we pull from our culture or cultures. So it is in the hopefully very near future, domesticshelters.org. We are very interested in having more of these conversations, having more of these discussions. So keep an eye open for our webinar series, because we're going to be digging in deeper over the coming couple of months into 2023. So thank you all again for attending. Everyone who's listening, thank you for being here as well. And now we're going to take a 5-minute break. Stay tuned after the break for our next Purple Ribbon Awards Inspire panel, Domestic Violence Youth Initiatives, where we'll talk with other PRA winners about how to create successful youth initiatives. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I am Amanda Kippert. I'm the editor-in-chief at domesticshelters.org. And in this session, we're going to be talking about youth initiatives in the domestic violence field. And today's panelists include Carol DeBoer, Candace Lewis?
Yes.
Thanks. I said I wasn't going to do last names, and here I am. I want to make sure that was right. And Erica Yamaguchi. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves further and talk a little bit about the organizations that they're with and what they do there. So Candace, do you want to start?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. Like Amanda said, my name is Candace Lewis, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs here at District Alliance for Safe Housing, also known as DASH. We are the district's largest safe housing provider for transitional housing and emergency housing services. Here at DASH, I oversee all of our transitional housing programs, emergency housing programs, and some amazing funding that we have, what we call Survivor Resilience Fund, and it's flex funding for survivors to address their financial situations that to hopefully, the intent is to prevent housing instability or homelessness. And so we work with families, we work with folks 18 and up. We also work with the children of survivors as well, because here at DASH, we believe that the family owns the survivorship, not just the person who's, experienced the quote unquote experienced the abuse. And so I'm just excited to be here, excited to be a part of this conversation, looking forward to just talking with you all, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Carol, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Carol DeBoer. I run Safe Harbor Child Access Centers in Flemington, New Jersey. We're a bit unique. We're an all-volunteer, a nonprofit. We don't take any salaries either. So our program has really organically grown, but in two separate ways. We started out doing court-ordered supervised parenting time. And it was very difficult for me because here I'm seeing abusers as well as the non-abuser and the children as well. And these are court orders. So it's kind of like people have to follow that. So that's our one thing. We have a special program that we do with those children before they come here to see the parent that they're going to have the visit with. The other thing is our big youth initiative. A few years back, we had just sadly, several young adults died due to suicide. And teens somehow found our agency here. And every Friday night they were coming here, and it was just a safe place to come. And after they went off to college, we still wanted that to go on. So I'll lead into that later, but that's a whole nother program that we do also for little ones, teens, and parents.
Very good. Sounds amazing. Erica, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, thanks. My name is Erica, and I'm with the Camp Hope America program, which is a program of the Alliance for Hope International. So we serve youth ages 7 to 17. A qualifier for our program is that they are either impacted by domestic violence, child abuse, or sexual abuse. So that is a qualifier to be in the program. We have a year-round Pathways program and summer learning experience that we offer with a week-long overnight camp. And so last year we had over 4,500 children enrolled with our 45 affiliates that represent 23 states.
Wow, that's awesome. That Camp Hope thing is such a unique and amazing thing that you guys do.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to jump into some questions now, and I'm going to throw it out there for anybody who wants to take it so we can learn a little bit more about youth initiatives. So as we know, educating young people early and often about the warning signs of abuse and also how to assert boundaries is vital in helping them to avoid becoming victims to abusers. What program or programs have your organization developed that you found to be most successful in reaching youth about recognizing abuse? Who wants to go first?
I can say something. With our teenagers that are coming here, we know there's a lot of the teen dating violence and all of that. But we also know that at that point, it's getting a little late in the game. We need to talk about things much sooner. So when I was saying we're unique, we do have a teen and young college age with children. And we do activities that are all surrounded. We don't have to necessarily talk about, name it, abuse or, domestic violence, but we do activities that just start learning how to feel safe, that there are people that are there for you to keep you safe. So we've kind of organically, like somebody else said, just kind of happened. And this program, we probably have, over the summer, we just did it one evening a week, and we had at least 50 people here. We're a very small building. But that was parents and children also, and then the teens and the college kids.
That's awesome. Anybody else want to talk about their programs?
Sure. All of our work that we do at Camp Hope America is informed by the science of hope. So all of our programming is infused with that model. So our program has a curriculum that we have that is hope centered, and we have different hope heroes that we go over with our participants, and we have what we call truth statements. So we are used to having tough conversations with the youth that we serve, just because we know that they have been personally impacted and have already experienced interpersonal violence in their homes and personally in their lives. So one thing that we do is, for example, with our truth statements, one might be, my voice has power. So encouraging them to always talk about how they're feeling, that their voice does matter and that we want to hear it. And so when we're thinking of abuse or unhealthy relationships or things in that matter, we just want to encourage them that that's not a conversation that only happens one time a week or one time at summer. That's something that they can always come back to our affiliates or to their hope coaches to discuss and sort of tackle those tough questions and difficult moments in their lives and have that space to do that. Another element of the programming that we do is what we call challenge by choice model. So we talk to our young people about how they can be challenged to different areas. So when we're thinking about stress, we talk about comfort zone, challenge zone, and panic zones. And so they get to decide in all elements of our programming at what level they want to participate in. And so at that point, we want them to grow in the challenge zone, but if they hit a panic zone, that they know how to say, okay, that's enough. I'm starting to notice these stress responses and I need to take a break. So we do that by providing safe activities for them where they can explore those things, but that relates to how they are in relationship with their peers, with adults. And so we want them to take that home with them so that they can start utilizing those same skill sets, whether it's at school or in their home environment as well.
Very good. That's amazing. Candace, did you want to talk about any of your programs?
Yeah, so here at Dash, we just recently we've had youth programs, but one of the things that we kind of realized through our assessment of our programs is that the youth that are not necessarily in the youth programs, but maybe in the family programs, needed that support just as much. And so we created a child and family department, and that group is catered just to those folks. And so we've partnered with different folks in the city, DC Public Schools, Calhoun Coaching and Consultation, Ayuda, and some of our other friends to provide workshops for parents as well as for those young folks about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries. Because when you say domestic violence to an 11-year-old, that means nothing. But if you say unsafe behavior and healthy relationships and good touch, bad touch, and those things that relates to the language in which they speak, and that resonates more to them. And so we've created that space for them to have their own groups and workshops and activities, after school programming, to talk about those things with their parents as well as without their parents, so that they have the freedom and autonomy to discuss without any sense of, feeling like they're going to get in trouble or feeling like someone, they're saying something they shouldn't be saying. But with, of course, trained professionals there to help cultivate and guide those conversations, and then also provide insight for the things that they're saying. So that's something that we just recently done. So far, we've had about 7 different workshops that have been really, really successful. We were a little hesitant about, even with the teens, but what we've done with them is they've created their own group. And so they call it the Self-Love Club. So we're super excited about that because that was something that they created. So we provided the space and they made it their own. And so they gave us lists of activities and things and topics that they wanted to discuss. And so, here in the next year, we're planning to, build those out and create spaces for those conversations also. So definitely something that, we've looked at what other people are doing, how they're doing it well, and figured out how that works with our model and how we can implement it here at Dash.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love Self-Love Club.
Me too. I was so excited when I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So, and when they were like, adamant about, because it started off as a one-time workshop, and that was the plan, to just do it. And it was a two-part workshop on healthy relationships, and they really loved it, and they really just dove into it and made it their own. So, from that, our organization is trauma focused but survivor driven. So, if they decide that this is something that they want that's going to benefit them, we're going to put whatever force we can behind it. So, now we have the Self-Love Club and it's going really well. So really excited about it.
That's so cool. And to empower them to figure out what they
Absolutely.
It's so important for survivors of any age, but I think sometimes we forget with kids, right?
Yeah. And that's something I think that we kind of like had an aha moment about, that there was a need not being addressed by that particular certain age groups in our building. It was a learning moment for us, but definitely working and moving in the right direction. So.
Love that. Okay, so in order to both start the healing process and break the cycle going forward, what kind of support do you guys think that youth need most after enduring childhood domestic violence, when they witness or experience domestic violence at home between their parents? Anybody want to jump in with the answer on that? Want to volunteer, one of you? And involuntarily.
I'll go. So in our Camp Hope America program, as I said, there are the qualifiers that we have. And so at that moment where a child discloses, we believe that, therapeutic resources are a great place to start in making sure that that child is able to be in a safe environment. So that would be the number one thing, right? But as the child is moving into a space of healing, we really want to be able to model those healthy relationships to them. And so we do that through our program with the different layers of people that they're coming in contact with. So that might be everyone from their coordinator to their hope coaches, all that have been trained in the science of hope. So we make that a theme in the work that we do, so that they can start seeing that what happened to them does not mean that that's how they're defined. We want to give them their childhood back so that they can start developing healthy relationships and start realizing that maybe they didn't have a choice in some things that have occurred in their lives, but just now looking forward with goal setting and finding pathways to that future goal setting, just that they can start creating some of the things and take back a little bit of that control that they might have lost in their experiences. So everything that we do, we also want to try to infuse just as much boundaries and consent as we can, and that it's not just about intimate relationships, but just, in a camp setting, hey, can I use your water bottle? Or can I use your bug spray. And if someone says no, then it's not personal. You're just going to move on to someone else. So really helping them find their voice, using emotion coaching where we're naming feelings, we're naming different anger and frustration and happiness and worry, and infusing our programs with opportunities to have those discussions, just so that they know that they can start discovering who they are now that they are on that path to hope and healing.
Excellent.
I can add to that, since we are a trauma sensitive center also. So anybody who comes in here to work with us as a volunteer or anything, even our college interns, we go over, the ACEs and trauma, certain ways to talk to our children. So most of our children that come are school-age children that, like I said, work with our teens and all, but we also have, our center is very child geared. So every room you go in, we used to have adult room, a Zen room, a playroom. Realized the children don't want to be away where they can't see everybody. So we knew we had to try to broaden it and make everything is child, ready. So we do have a lot of discussion with the children, but more through the arts, through music, through any of the arts, actually, because we see, do they get frustrated quickly because they can't do something? And then we can take that child maybe and do small groups and do things. So we really, because our children are not as verbal and would not know how to explain any of that, we do much more through the arts. And that has gotten them to be able to express themselves. And then we can take it a little step further. We have the doll houses, all those kind of things, but it's all trauma. We assume and just try to look at everybody as if they have had trauma. So we treat everybody with gentle, the kindness and certain language that we use.
So good. So good. I heard both of you talking about this identifying of emotions thing, which I just feel like is so vital for kids who have been through trauma to understand, because so much of their trauma, from what I've researched, comes out in the form of anger and outbursts and acting out and things that people would think is something other than trauma, right? Like a misbehaving child, when actually it's just other traumas manifesting. So I just think that's so great that you're teaching them how to identify those emotions and handle them in a better way. And also the hope coach thing, Erica. Can I get a hope coach? I would like a hope coach.
Absolutely.
We'll have to sign you up. But what you said, Amanda, is really important, right? Connecting those emotions to behaviors, right? When we're working with young people, so that they can start realizing that too, but not at the expense of someone else's safety,
Right.
and showing them and modeling that to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like I tell my kids, you can be angry, but you can't be mean. So let's figure out a different way.
Right. And I think at Dash, our youth program, they're young people, but they're not children. So they are, and they look like adults and they look like, big people. And so, their frustration and anger manifests different, and it can lead to much larger problems for them. And so oftentimes where we're starting with is, starting just with stability. A lot of the young people that come to us have lived a life of homelessness, a life of trauma, a life of abuse, from family abuse to then now they have experienced partner abuse, and that's how they get to us. And so it's cyclic, and it's become, generational. And so we understand that, and we understand how, often we're looking at adult bodies, but they're children inside of there. They're unhealed children that are still battling those traumas that they've experienced for years. As we know that I can't work on my trauma if I don't have anywhere to stay, if I don't have anywhere to eat. So for we're generally starting there. Let's get you a stable environment. Our model here is that home means safety, right? And so it's a lot of times for these young people, this is the first place they've had their own bed. This is the first place that they've had their own space and room, that there's, not constant violence and constant, access to other folks having access to them. So it's peace for them. And so helping them even enjoy that, because then, there's there's things that come with that too. So helping them stabilize in a place. And we look at the housing stability, we look at like their economic and financial stability, and then we look at the overall well-being. And so once they are able to like stabilize and say, okay, I'm in a place where I can actually work on these things because I'm not so hyper focused on my ability to have food and my ability to have income and my ability to, know where I'm going to be sleeping every night. Then we focus in on the mental health pieces, their physical health. And, we also do, even non-traditional things. Is it yoga? Is it, Reiki? We did sound baths about 2 weeks ago, and it was a hit. It was amazing. And so we look at just all types of alternative methods for healing. Like I say, a lot of them have come from different systems, so their trust in systems have been broken. So we're trying to help them to navigate those spaces as an adult, but also navigate those spaces in healthy ways. And so we work with them. They get a coach, and their coach is literally their number one fan. And like I always say all the time, like the coach is a part of the game, but he's not in the game. It's your game to play, right? But we're just here to kind of get that overview of what's happening around you, provide some pointers, tell you, hey, somebody's behind you, hey, somebody's over there, or fix this way, turn this way, to guide them, because essentially, it's their life to live, it's their choices to make. But we just want to know them to have that, for them to have that support and have that structure and stability to say, like, I know my basics are met, right? So now I can do that hard work to work on the trauma, work on my healing, work on, figuring out who I am. And also too, it's 18 to 24. That's like the worst time of your life, right? Like you just, it's so much influence and you're figuring out life, and not having someone to do that with is, just, unfortunate, but, them having that person to say, I know I have my coach, I know I have the support of Dash, and we support them through that throughout the time they're in our programs. We have so many amazing young people who have gotten into our programs and got into trades and got into college, got into, just stabilized employment, got into, even now that to some of them, they're exiting and they're peer mentors. So they've, gone and done the work. So now that they're helping other folks who are, experiencing life and the life experiences that they've had. So, and that's what we want to teach, like that, you, and because all of them, most of them, they want to, they yearn that experience. And so kind of like how the self-love group came up. So we definitely, like we say, we are getting them at a different space and time. And so we're having to kind of address some other things before we can get to the, like what they say, the meat and potatoes. But once we get them to a place of stability, it's much more easier for them to then focus on those other things through the different methods that we provide through them, through our mental health services and through our non-traditional, spirit-based and faith-based practices that, whatever it is that they desire, we're connecting them to that and bringing it to them, or providing access to them to go outward to get those services.
I think no matter what, all of us, whatever ages we're working with, the coaching method seems to work best.
Yes.
And, and people do gravitate to other people who they feel comfortable with. It's very, here, even with the college students versus the little ones, you'll watch, they just go to someone, you always wonder, and what was it about that person? And so every time they come here, we really make a big commitment that if you're involved here, especially as the coaching part, you're always here. Mentoring, we tried, and that was a little difficult for us. We felt to use all of our youth and help our older kids who've been through some stuff to heal as well with the children. But I think that's the biggest thing of all, is having a coach. As they say in the ACEs, if you have one person who has got your back, you're way ahead of the game already.
Absolutely. It makes a difference, Carol, for sure.
Yeah, that's why you always hear about like the coaches or the one teacher that believed in me and it made all the difference in my life. I mean, that's so important, especially for kids who have gone through trauma. So tell me this, how is talking to youth about domestic violence or abuse different from talking with adult survivors? And how do youth process that kind of trauma differently than adults?
I went last, so I'll let someone else go.
Okay.
I feel adults have verbal skills. They have the language to put to it. Children do not. So when we're saying, even when they walk in, so how do you feel today? It's too broad. What do you mean, how do I feel? I can feel my toes. I feel this. So I think we narrow down our conversations, and we all, with adults, there is more of the verbal stuff, but then we incorporate them with our children to show them the activities that we've done with the children to hopefully bring that home, because that's something obviously they felt safe here. So how can we bring a little safe harbor into the home with them as well?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Erica?
When thinking about the difference between adults and kids, specifically thinking about our participants, there is that difference, right, of not just what they've experienced, but just about it being age appropriate, and that the conversations don't just happen, between 5 and 6, but you're going to have those same conversations and revisit them in a different way as they grow up. Which is really nice about having a program where they can start with this at 7 and age, out of the programming at 17. And as Candace said, hopefully come back as a hope coach for the younger kids once they're sort of settled into where they are and develop some of those leadership skills. But I really liked what Candace said about some of those alternative activities. We do mindfulness and yoga with some of our camps as one of our themes. And when you have a room of 30 young people, ages 7 to 11 saying, what do you mean yoga is canceled in the morning? No, and protesting to that we say, okay, we're going to give it to you before bedtime. And they are all in position, in mindfulness and asking for that, then that they're taking that skill set back with them. But as far as the speaking to the adults versus the children, you want to make it age appropriate. And again, that it's a conversation that's ongoing to meet the needs of the individual. So what happens on a Monday conversation might look different than a Friday conversation, and being open to that, and that they get to kind of lead that conversation. And as Carol said, that making it sort of concrete for them to answer instead of just these broad statements that they don't know how to answer, but working with them. We also want to make sure that in those conversations, we are rebuilding that trust and safety and always modeling those healthy relationships. The average ACE score for our participants is 6. So we know that from data that we collect with our participants. And so again, that's why it's so important to have that healing-centered engagement and trauma-informed care that we're modeling with them, just so that they can have those relationships and conversations with us as they're little and as they get older too.
Awesome.
I love that for both programs. I think that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
Candace, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that question?
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback off of both of them. We get them in the between the adult and the child. So we're, like I say, they're, we start a lot off with the psychoeducation, like giving them the language, helping them understand, because they have the influence and responsibility of the adult, but the understanding of the child, right? So it's kind of like helping them to gain enough knowledge and access to information to get to having the tools to live in the life that they're in currently, and not where they were stuck in because of their trauma. So it's almost kind of like a dump sometimes, so kind of get them, like, bring them up to speed, because our program's only 24 months, and as you see, 2 years, you blink and it's it's going to be 2030, and so helping them to have as much access to information to gain those skills, and then finding the best ways that they learn. We try to do different types of like the different types of learning. We have the hands-on approach. We have people who are visual learners. We do a lot of like book read-alongs and different things to kind of say, like, okay, what are your learning styles? How do you gather and gain information? How do you process information? And then we kind of do our trainings in different ways to make sure that we are meeting those needs. And then after we quote unquote give them the language, then we can help them process, because what we found at first was that we were trying to process, and like Carol said, they didn't have the language. But they were very much in need of having the language, because it was creating barriers in their life as adults or young adults. And so helping them to get the language and have access to information to understand what even is this. Like, a lot of them didn't even know that they were in domestic violence relationships because they had experienced violence their entire life. So what is domestic violence, and how is this different from my mom and dad did this, and my aunt, or my, whoever my custodial guardian was. This is what I've experienced in my neighborhood and in the life that I live. So it's, helping them identify no, actually, that's not okay. That's not healthy behavior. That's not normal behavior. And that's what it is, right? But that doesn't make you an unhealthy or unnormal person. It's just that you experience those things. And so helping them divide those two concepts and then put that and apply it to their current world. And we, like I say, a lot of education, a lot of just we do a lot of assessment of their needs and a lot of assessment of their skill sets and a lot of assessment of like how they want to gain the information because we want their buy-in. They're at that place too now where it's like, well, yeah, I don't need this. I got other things to worry about. And it's like, no, kind of need this to move forward, and it makes it easier. And so helping them see that in a way that's palatable and it makes sense to them. But we take it from them. Like, what do you need and how do you want it? And then we model our, whatever we provide for them based around that. And of course, using the sciences and evidence-based practice that are currently there to do so. But we make sure that we're just, like I say, we assess, and then we do things and we assess afterwards. I know they're probably tired of our surveys, but they do them. They do them well. But we want to just make sure that we are speaking to them and speaking their language. So
That's so important because teenagers have their own language.
Interesting group, very much, very, very interesting group. Like I think they asked for training, and I think they didn't. We kind of did the survey and we were trying to teach them the importance of like answering it correctly. So they were just like, okay, we're going to do this, get this $25 gift card, be done, right? And so we did something that they asked for. It was like really crazy because I was like legit, people had to have just like click on the things, right? So it was something, and they were like, wait, why is this happening? And we're like, the survey said. It was like, okay. And then everybody was like, okay, we need to be honest, we didn't. And so we were like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, what you guys say you want to do. We're gonna piggyback off of what you guys are telling us you need. So we need to have the good information. And so now they're diligent. They're like, I answered every question. This was not worded correctly. I don't, they're like giving feedback. So it just shows their buy-in to their program. And we've given it to them to own and say, this is yours. Tell us what you need and tell us, how you want us to do this. So it's like I say, interesting group. I love the age group, but they're the most fun. And also sometimes they're like all over the place, but I love it. So.
I love how much enthusiasm all three of you have for working with youth. You can tell that you really love what you do. So I love that. If there are, and I'm sure there are, a lot of us advocates and activists and experts out there who are parents, do you have any advice for them on starting the conversation with their own children about, if they haven't yet already, about boundaries, consent, warning signs of abuse? Is it just a casual conversation that you start one day? Is it a formal sit down? What would you advise? Carol, you want to start?
Yeah, since I do work within the court system as well, doing these supervised visits, I felt our first most important thing, because by the time they come to Candace, like she was saying, there's so much to unravel. You can't even begin with the trauma because you got, they don't have a bed to sleep in. I have found that somehow our society has gotten away from thinking about our children come first. How do we protect our children? Even I think sometimes in the DV world, where, no more are the children a witness. They're the victims as well. They're right there. Because I noticed when they first come here, the children, it's kind of quiet here. It's very organized, but playful. And first they don't know what to do. And then after a week or so, they don't want to leave, because it is so different than their home. And then that's where we can start having that conversation. What's different about Safe Harbor? Why don't you want to leave here? How can we help you there? But I think we're underestimating sometimes just having these kids want to talk. They do. And it may involve tears, and we play a lot of music here. And they were saying we do the meditation, even little ones. We do the meditation. We have a jiu-jitsu instructor who's just showing them basic things to make themselves feel safe, within their own body. But I think that's a really big thing, and more programs that could talk about it. And again, maybe not in the language, but in activities and all of that to start young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I feel like it definitely needs to start younger than a lot of people think it does. Erica, did you have any advice, thoughts on that?
Yes, just thinking about the caregiver and participant relationship. Not all of our participants live with a biological family, so we think of it more as caregiver, but as much as you can incorporate caregiver engagement in programming, even if you don't have that component, but just sending a letter home with them, right? These are things we discussed, or these are topics that we're going to discover in these next few months. Anything that can get them connected, giving them a cheat sheet of just open-ended questions to ask their young person to help start those conversations. So anything that we can help that young person receive trauma-informed, parenting or guidance in the home, I think is helpful. And I think moving away from consent and boundary talk being related to interpersonal relationships, but all relationships, right? May I hold the door open for you? May I use your pen? May I do this? And asking consent and making it part of everyday language will go a long way in helping that young person say, this isn't okay, or this isn't feeling right, or something isn't right here, when people might start to take advantage of them. And again, just continuing that through the lifespan. We know their brains are not done developing yet at this age, and that won't happen for a long time. And so again, just these themes that keep coming and having those talks in different ways and being age appropriate for that young person, and definitely starting the conversations early. But one thing Candace said is that I really enjoyed, and with listening to Carol as well, is just that all of our programs are seed planting, right? So we don't know what's taking hold right now and what might sprout, a day, 5 days, 5 months from now. But we know that by doing surveys, by showing them that we're evidence-based, and by asking them to think in these critical ways, that's something that they'll take into adulthood and hopefully start with their families when they start to be in their own relationships. And we want them to be able to think, oh, it does matter, right? What their intention of their surveys, they just wanted that gift card, and then they thought, wait, why are we doing this? We didn't want to do this. Well, that's what you said. So we're listening. So giving them those opportunities to really be intentional with their work and finding sort of where they want to go, and having that voice and taking accountability, and always wanting them to be authentic in who they are, and that's not a bad thing. So with the caregivers, starting those conversations early and just empowering them to really feel like they can lead where they're going and use their voice for questions and answers. And we always say to young people, find that safe adult that you can confide in. And we forget that we're that safe adult, right? So what do we need to give that young person so that they can come to us and say, this is going on, or I'm not sure if this is right, but we need to infuse that into the programs, as far as we are that safe adult for them. And we need them to know that. And if it's not us, who is it? So teaching everybody about those skill sets.
And I think going back to the very beginning of the discussion between adults and children, even here, especially this summer, we had a longer program. We invited the parents here. And every night that we were here, we had dinner for everybody. So we sat down, it was quiet, we talked, just everyday talk. Hey, what did you enjoy doing when you first got here? What was the best thing? What should we plan on for next week? Because sometimes the parents, because they're hurting so badly, or the caregiver, they don't even look at that child that may be hurting, or realizing that 4-year-old has never seen a home where a dish isn't being broken or something else. So to actually be able to feel that and experience it with your family. And sometimes we'll have smaller, more intimate dinners. So it just might be 4 families with their children. And that's helped a lot, because I think our parents also feel that they're more engaged with our program, and that they have something to take home with them as well.
That's so important. So good. Anything else that you wanted to add, Candace?
No. I was I really like what you guys do at Camp Hope. I think that's just amazing to integrating that into everyday language, like consent into everything, because then it becomes a practice and not something that you have to stop and consciously think about. Like, it's something that I do in everything I am. And I just think about oh man, I was privileged enough to have a parent who instilled that into me very early. But that's not the case, right? That's the exception, not the rule. And so I really, really like that. I really do like that. And I think that's something that I'm like, I'm taking notes. But no, because I think it's something I practice, but I just didn't think about it for other. And, you know, I think about it as like a separate conversation about consent, but like, how do you implement that into your everyday activity and to everything that you do? I think that's really amazing. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that, that you're all doing that. And I'm definitely gonna take that idea.
Right. We want prevention instead of intervention.
Absolutely.
And usually we
Absolutely.
think of it as intervention.
Right. For sure. Absolutely.
Call me if you want to brainstorm.
I'm already thinking about it. I'm like, I got Carol name written down and yours, because I've heard both of you say some things, and I'm like, oh, we could have some conversations, and that's what this is about, though. Like, to build those connections and you know, see like what things are happening in other places to see how we can build. And so I love it. That really resonated with me. So
Amazing. The more collaboration, the better. Well, we are nearing the end of this panel, so I wanted to leave the last couple minutes or so for you ladies to offer up any final thoughts that you might have, anything that you want to talk about that I didn't broach, just anything that you want to end on, your closing statement, if you will. Does anybody have one? Something cool your organization is doing, some PSA you want to give, a soapbox you want to stand on? We'll take it.
I have a lot of those.
I know, right?
Right. Don't get me started today, Amanda. It's Friday afternoon. No, but I just want to first thank everybody for being here. I'm honored to share this award with so many other amazing programs. I did look them up, and I love to see that, you know, you guys have these amazing things and initiatives going on around the country. And I think, you know, I just want to encourage the people that are watching this and the folks that are here today. You know, this conversations like this kind of just excite me and reignite, you know, that desire. Like, after having a long week, it's the end of the fiscal year. We're, you know, nonprofit, so September is hell month for us, to say the least. So these conversations are invigorating for me, and it's exciting, and I get ideas, and it makes my brain like churn and think about how we can do things better and what we could do differently to build our organization. So just encouraging others to take these conversations and grow from them. And in partnership, like Amanda said, is everything. That's how we grow. That's how we, you know, all of us are here for a reason. Nobody goes into social work because we get big bucks, right? We do this because our heart's in it. And so I just wanted to appreciate you all. Thank you so much for the context that you've given today to this conversation, and providing the different informations and you know, ideas that you all are doing at your organization. And just for folks that are watching and into this, you know, continue to educate yourself and others about you know, about abuse to children, about how DV impacts others, how sexual violence impacts others. It's important. It's a community response. It's not just the responsibility of the organizations who do this work. But what I tell people all the time is that we're the fifth person that these folks get to before, you know, after something has happened, or after folks they see the bus driver, the hairdresser, the grocery store person, the teacher, all of those people that they encounter. So the more people that are informed, the more people that know, the better access that folks have to this information. So I just always encourage us to, you know, be stewards of that. And if you're put in positions to be around folks who are in need, know the resources, know what's out there. You don't have to be the expert, but if you know the number to the local place that they can call, that makes the difference, because that's that one moment that you might have to change someone's life. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the ladies that are here today. I've just really enjoyed this conversation.
Same here. Thank you, everybody, as well. It was very good. We just have to stay in touch. Keep it going, right?
Carol or Erica, did you have anything that you wanted to say, follow up on? Or
the biggest thing is just to have hope. I guess I'm always hope. And so here there is a sense of hope, because the kids have such a good time. And our thing is that as dark as things may be, there's always light. So our first thing that we do, usually when our younger kids come in, we give them one of those little battery operated candles, and they can take it home. So there's always a little light on in their bedroom or wherever else. So if they're feeling a little frightened, they can look at that light and remember what it feels like to be safe, because that's very often they have no idea. So that's our thing, is just to keep reminding them there is light out there.
I love that.
That's so great. I love that too. Again, just a few little themes of just finding who your people are, right? So that might not be anyone in your building, but when you're in that low hope moment and you need to that uplift, who is it that you call that you can reach out to? Always thinking of goal setting and orienting to the future. And how do you get there? There's not just one way to the grocery store, right? You can go this way, that road is blocked, there's an accident that way. And sometimes you're creative and take a new path that you've never been on. So not being afraid to sort of go into uncharted territory, right? And know, again, who your people are. So if it doesn't work out, you just make that phone a friend and, hey, I need help. And don't be afraid to ask for help. As providers, sometimes it feels very lonely. And as leadership, we know that that can be a very lonely place when people are looking for you to make decisions and guide others. And our young people are looking at us and the programs that we're delivering to them. And so, as we said, ask them, what do they want? You know, follow their lead, and you're not in it alone. Don't be afraid to not get it right the first time, and just know that there's others out there that want to be supportive, and just finding who that network is for you. And that is the power of collaboration, and to just keep building and building and building until we can have what we want in our community and for all of our young people and older people that missed where we are now. But just that merry-go-round is going, and so where do we hop on?
I love that. Well, thank you all again for sharing your insights with us, for attending this today. It's why you are Purple Ribbon Award winners, and we are honored to be in your presence. And thank you for everyone who tuned in to watch this today. We are going to take a 5-minute break. Stay tuned after the break for our next Purple Ribbon Awards Inspire panel, which is on longevity in the domestic violence field. All right, welcome back, everyone. For our final panel today, we're going to be talking about how to build a long and successful career in the domestic violence field. We are very fortunate to be joined by some of our 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award winners, Nancy Murphy, Sherry Castine, Mary Acuna, and Kimberly Harris. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you could all be with us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to start things off by having everyone introduce themselves and share a little bit about your amazing career in helping victims and survivors of abuse. Nancy, do you mind starting us off?
I'd be happy to. So congratulations to the rest of you who are Lifetime Achievement recipients or award recipients. So my name is Nancy Murphy, and I first came to our organization, Northwest Sunny Life, as a survivor. I heard a phone call. I heard an ad on the radio. Are you being hurt by someone you love, or someone you love hurting you? And so I got to the payphone, put my quarter in, and called them. And I expected someone to just kind of like reassure me that everything was going to be okay. Maybe say a little prayer for me, and give me some encouraging words. Instead, they invited me into this program, and I didn't have enough sense of myself at that time to say no, thank you. I felt like I had taken up their time, so I agreed to go, and I've been there ever since. And so the journey for me has been just really profound, learning that, recovery is kind of a lifelong journey, learning the dynamics of domestic violence, and then just seeing how many people are still reaching out for help, whether they be perpetrators or victims. I have finished my bachelor's degree along this time, my master's degree, and a doctorate. I had the opportunity to engage people from all over the world talking about this issue, and it's just been an absolute delight. So our organization is in Seattle, Washington, and we have, a global work as well. And I'm just really thankful to be here. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nancy. Next, let's go down the list to Sherry. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your background?
Hi, everybody. And I echo Nancy's congratulatory thoughts. It's just really nice to be recognized for a lifetime achievement. I can't think of anything I did in my lifetime that didn't involve domestic violence. I was unfortunately a victim of domestic violence in my first marriage at a very young age. And when I was filing for my protection order, I remember the judge holding the paper up and saying, "Now you need to remember, Sherry, this is not made of steel. With his weapons, he can come right through that." And I remember just being horrified, not knowing what the words domestic violence meant in the early 80s. When I first started to work, we didn't have O.J. Simpson cases and Lifetime movies that talked about domestic violence. I luckily grew up in a family where it was a great family. We didn't have domestic violence, so I didn't know what that meant. But a short time after I left my husband and was in just a abandoned trailer, literally an abandoned trailer is what I moved into. We didn't have a lot of shelters around at that time. My daughter, at the age of 15 months, was abducted and then brutally raped and left to die in an abandoned car. By the grace of God, she survived, but she is suffering every single day. I talk about it's a journey, it's a struggle. I'm remarried, but it was just so hard to get to trust again. And with my daughter, it's continual post-traumatic stress disorders. It's that I've studied a lot with the amygdala in the brain and how that's affected when you're in a trauma and at such a young age. So I remember sitting in a courtroom for a protection order and the trial of the offender that raped my daughter, and had nobody was there to help me. And I thought, this can't be, this has got to change. And so I read something one day that said, I wish the world would change. And then the next day I woke up and thought I was that somebody that needed to make that change. And so I did that change. And I've been working in domestic violence now for about 35 years. That kind of tells you how old I am. I've gathered some great awards from the U.S. Department of Justice, from this Sioux folks, but most of all, just from the people I work with. I remember going out and sitting on the curb in our parking lot because somebody was just so scared to come in and open the door. She could park in our parking lot, but what was it going to be like to walk through those doors? And so I sat with her and I said, I know how heavy those shoes are. I use those shoes every day to walk in myself, and just, being there to change and save lives was everything that I needed to do in my lifespan. And I keep thinking I got a few more good years in myself. And I told my board of directors, I'm like, Lifetime Achievement Award. Now I think I can retire, right? And they disagreed. So, but I've enjoyed the work, but it's been hard work. I think with all of the gals that have here, I did this work, what we call grassroots. We didn't have grant money. When I first started, we didn't have anything. When we started, we were at the kindness of others. So I'm glad this direction has gone, but I'm also grateful for the future and the staff that I'm able to mentor to carry on this legacy.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sherry. Next, Maria, can you share a little bit about your background? Oh, we'll unmute yourself there. No worries.
I'm Maria Cunha, mother of 2 adult children, and I also am a survivor of domestic violence. I would like to start with thanking everybody that made possible this award to happen. For me, working as a residential manager or Rainbow have been also for 31 years, it's gonna be 32. My journey began when I started volunteering. I want to help other people like they helped me because I was a victim to it. So Rainbow hired me to do a residential advocate. And working here, they give me also the opportunity to grow between the agency, and I'm the manager right now. I'm extremely grateful with Rainbow. They support me all the way. Working with Rainbow, helping other people have their challenges and their rewards. I have met a lot of people from all walks of life. In these so many years I've been working here, I see people come and go. Some of them get really where they need to be. Other people, you know, they not ready. But we still here. We here to help them. We work as a great team. You know, I'm from California. Rainbow Services is my agency, and I'm really grateful because how do we not get the trauma when the clients come all beat up or like countless time where people come really bad. So Rainbow help us. You know, we have like an array of services for the employees, you know, from yoga. We also do working groups. We like staff retreats. We do community gatherings. We do a lot to kind of like, help people not to get into the trauma ourselves. So for that, I'm really, thankful to Rainbow. And really, when I work here, it's just not me, it's a whole team of people. It goes from the residential advocates who answer the hotline to the support service advocate to the housing department, and also a legal team that help people navigate through the system, and the people that sign the checks, to we can house a person. So, I'm really proud to be part of this amazing team that we support each other, because sometimes it's really heavy stuff what we do. So let me see what else I can say. We have, they asked me what is my reason to be here or what inspired me. Inspire me, see the transformation of the residential people that come here, the participants that come and transform their lives. That inspired me also to give something back to my community as they help me. I think that it's a lot of more things to do. I think that, we can inspire other agencies that also work with survivors to get trained in trauma informed. We use trauma informed. And I think that we can get other people involved, to help survivors that sometimes they have more challenges than just DB. That's mental health. There's other people that they may have, a need that need to be catered special to them. Like sometimes when people are like 60 plus, or people with pets, people that have a different need. We fortunately enough to have 2 shelters, emergency and a transitional, and we do take somebody with a pet or a service animal. We really try to help more people than other colleagues, other shelters. So that's all I can say about
That's fantastic.
Working for Rainbow.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate it. Kimberly, can you round us out and share about your background and the organization that you work with?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody on the panel. I congratulate you all. I admire you all from afar. I am Kimberly Harris. I am the CEO and co-founder of Women's HQ. Women's HQ is a nonprofit organization based out of Washington, D.C. We service women of color who are in and around the DMV area, who reside in homeless shelters, DV homeless shelters. We assist them in 3 pillars. We focus on their health and wellness, which we do art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, etc. We also, we focus in on career enhancement to get the woman back to work or to school or both. The survivors also can partake in our program, which I think is the stellar program, which is the Work to Wealth. I wrote that piece myself, as I am a domestic violence survivor. I stayed in a domestic violence shelter 3 years in my life. when both of my kids were in college. I fled my abuser to save my life. At my lowest of lows, I promise the good Lord above, if you can navigate me out of this space, if you can guide me, give me a beak of light, a beak of hope, I promise to reach back when I come up for air to all my sister survivors out there. I will lift them. I will lift their voices. I will dedicate my life to this work. And that's what led me to do the work in 2020 to make Women's HQ possible. During COVID here in Washington, D.C., we had an uptick of women trying to flee their abusers to shelter spaces that weren't available. At the time, we only had 11 shelters locally. And they had, they were looking for one bed just for them and their children and couldn't find it. Everybody was at home. Everybody was, pretty much in distress because of COVID, the damages it was causing, the financial setbacks it was causing, which was causing a lot of violence within the home. So we had a lot of women that were out in the street. And if they weren't out in the street, they were, summoned to stay with their abusers. Some of the stories are just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. We try to, at Women's HQ, help the survivor navigate, their lives back or reclaim their lives back to wholeness. Whatever that approach is up to the independent survivor, because every survivor is not a cookie cutter, one type of person. We may have lived experience with this, but we're still individual women and we have voices and we now want those voices heard. I've never won anything in my life. I just want to say that I've shared that prior to coming here today. I've never won anything, but I feel so humbled by this award because the work is hard. It's definitely hard, but it's necessary. It's necessary for us to save us. And this is one of the passions that I have. This is what wakes me up every morning. This is what keeps me going. And this is what I fight for every day. I work with federal government agencies. I work with politicians. I'm here in Washington, so I do a lot of work with, the whole government approach because I think it's necessary and important, for grant funding, to get our programs and, to generate more of a space for us to heal us. And one of the exciting things that's taking place here in the 28th of September in Washington, D.C., and I've been invited, is the White House Summit on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And I have been selected by President Biden and Vice President Harris to attend. I am more than honored. I really don't know how I got in this space, but somebody recognized me and I appreciate that. And we have to do better. We have to do better in the spaces we're in. It doesn't matter the color of the skin. It matters the matter of the heart. We have to save lives. And if no other, we as survivors need to save each other from, undergoing the most tragic episodes in our lives and making them so we may never seek justice like this ever again in our lives. But, I think it's important for women to know that have experienced this or new at this, that are trying to reclaim their lives, that we are there for them. We're going to be here for a long, long time. So I am so happy and thrilled, and I thank you all for having me here today.
Absolutely. Well, wow. First off, I mean, I knew we had an amazing panel put together, but just to hear everyone kind of in their own words share why they're doing this work and what drives them on a day-to-day basis and the amazing accomplishments that you all have, just wow, that's the only word that I can think of. But I do want to dive into kind of our first question to talk about, we can't have a conversation about longevity in the field without talking about things like vicarious trauma and self-care and really how you keep yourself going when day after day, like so many of you mentioned, these horrific stories of the people that you've helped and the things that they've gone through. So I'd like to hear from each of you just, a couple tips or maybe even just, a specific story about how you were able to keep going and really, maintain that strength and light, even though, you're faced with these horrific stories on a day-to-day basis. Let's see, Nancy, do you mind starting us off?
No, I'd be happy to. So you can see I used to be blonde. So part of the stress of doing this work has aged me clearly. And I've also been doing this for 30 years, like my colleagues on this call. So it's wonderful. There's, I think the biggest trauma, well, I'm going to be beyond that is that with this issue, we've been able to build a team of people that really do the work. So, and then as I've heard from some of you, like a way to engage with the issues so that it's not all about me and so that I don't die of exhaustion trying to do this. So we have a team of advocates, a team of battered treatment providers. We have mental health counselors, over 50 of them. We have education and training. So we've built kind of like a way to engage youth and kind of like, an approach that I can manage when someone comes in and you see the depth and the breadth of their needs. It's like, what can we do? So like just to have a community-based approach. So that's helped me personally to know that I have people to refer to when people call, that there's a team of people that are dedicated, organized, trauma-informed, like they are appropriate referrals, and mostly people of faith. Because there's something about our faith that we can anchor to that kind of keeps us strong. And so, but I found that for burnout and compassion, fatigue has been really strong in my life when my story interacts with somebody else's. I get really triggered when there's that sense of helplessness. And I've had a few things that come up around those limiting beliefs around I can't. Like, I can't do this anymore. We can't fix it. This isn't going to work. And so in my own personal I can'ts, I came across Henry Nouwen, a Catholic priest who has a beautiful word. He says, it's not about what we do. It's not about what we have. It's not about what people say about us, but we are beloved children of God. And that whole kind of saying really helped tether me to it's not whether people like me or don't like me or angry or it's not about that. And it's not about so it's not about a reputation. It's not about the quantity of people we've helped. It's not about where our funding sources come from. It's not about any of that. It's about us personally, is that we're okay. We are okay. We're beloved, right? We're not damaged goods. We're not broken. We're okay. We're beloved. And doing the work out of a place of belovedness has really, really rooted me. The last thing I can't take time off. It's like, oh yes, I can. So creating margins, like just creating margins in life so that we can enjoy other things. And then you know about that. I saw you nod some heads there, around the, so we can create margins and we must. And then one of my big can'ts is that I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. I can't do, I can't. So I started watercoloring and I watercolor quite basic things, but it's so beautiful. And it's created this joy in my spirit that I too wake up every morning with this mission. We got to go, like, here we go. What are we doing today? And just like, I've loved this work, but I also now have margins. I also know watercolor, and I also now tell myself a different story. It's just not the trauma story that was defined. I'm not defined by my abuse. I'm defined by belovedness. So thank you.
And so fantastic advice. Thank you so much for that. Maria, do you mind going next and sharing some of the tips that you have for keeping your strength? And I'm going to unmute you here. There we go.
Yes. Working for a long time, sometimes it takes a toll. But we have an amazing team at Rainbow that we help each other. Also, we encourage self-care. But that is whether you need a day off in the middle of the week or you need a week off in the middle of the month. We strongly encourage people, and we wanted people not to have compassion fatigue. We need to encourage people because sometimes the guilt, I'm guilty myself sometimes, like I need a day off, but I have to do X, Y, and Z. So we really encourage people to take care of themselves because, you have an empty cup, you had nothing to give back. So we create a lot of things at Rainbow, even during the pandemic, that we can gather together. We will do like a Zoom, event, whether it was like a retreat, via Zoom meetings, and always checking with staff. Frontline workers, which is the residential advocates, we never stopped seeing clients during the pandemic. So we want to make sure that they were okay, physically, mentally, because he hit us all. So the amazing team that you work with, you have all, ideas on how to, just have a little time for yourself so you can be okay, so you don't have to burn out, and then what? You're not going to be able to do the job. So, so that's what Rainbow does here for all of us. It's not time that you can ask your supervisor for vacation, and we all help each other. We like a big team where we support each other. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just kind of taking notes along the way to see if there's any running themes here. And big red lights going off saying team. It's I can see that's one of the ways that you all have been able to keep going, is that you don't put it all on your shoulders. Maybe it feels like that sometimes, but when you kind of look back and reflect, you've built these teams that can help support you and diffuse some of the responsibilities and the work. And so that's fantastic. Kimberly, can you go next? And then we'll round things out with Sherry, just with some advice.
Yeah, I have to agree with Nancy and Maria. The self-care is very important to administer to yourself. It's that fuel of energy that we need to stay focused on the cause and to deliver, the proper messaging, and to have people, congregate in space and say, this is what's going on. We're the boots on the ground here. My organization, it's heavy. We do heavy work. And I tell all my workers and volunteers, there's no badge of honor in this work. So when you come to this space, please do understand you have to come with compassion. You have to come with being sympathetic to others. You have to come in a calm, in a spiritual and focused manner, because we're dealing with women that have been through a lot. And still, they go through a lot, and we are here to build them up, not to continue on tearing them down. Society and abusers have done that for forever, and we can't continue to have that harm come to these women. So I do my self-care. I like to get my nails done once a month, which is may not be a big deal to others, but that's my comfort zone. That's, my time to pamper and take care of me. I don't require a lot because I'm pretty focused on, the cause of what we do at Women's HQ, but I do believe self-care is important. I also believe that we have to continue on expanding our visibility with our partners in the space. I do a lot of community outreach as a CEO, because I think it's really important for us to partner with other nonprofits, corporations, keep, I even make sure that we're always connected politically, not taking particular sides, but just making sure that we always keep in front of our politicians to know that, hey, don't forget about the survivors over here. Like, these are our needs. These are what we would like to see improve. And, we keep open dialogue and we keep it safe and secure for the women. And we encourage the women to find their voice in that, because I'm not going to be here forever. I have to, one point or another, pass the baton on. So I'm building women up, to continue this legacy, because violence in America it's out of control. And, we look to our young to take that torch and keep it lit and take our voices forward in making sure that not just survivors of domestic and sexual assault, but all Americans are safe and secure and can navigate their lives in the security of knowing that there won't be violence against them. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And Sherry, anything else to add to that list of amazing advice?
I think that everybody had some great advice. I'm kind of like Nancy. I would be gray if I didn't have a good stylist that colored my hair all the time and kept it brown instead of gray. But my self-care, I'm a lot like Kimberly. I'm really moving more out of direct service and really mentoring people to take the baton from me. And so I was a one-woman shop when I started. I did all of the advocacy, the grant writing, when we did get grants in here. And I did everything. And it was just me and my daughter, and we lived in the shelter. And that's how we could afford to open a new program in South Dakota. I'm now in Iowa and I've been here for over 25 years now. But that self-care is so important. I can still remember my dad coming to visit with me about trying to talk me out of getting in this field because it was just too dangerous. And I thought, if not for me, then who's going to raise their voice if I don't start speaking about this? And so for me, it's been a lot of just going for walks, getting out, being with people. My self-care is I can walk from here to China, but I couldn't run a half a block or something. But just really doing some good exercise will help me get through my day. And then my team has been amazing. This is just kind of a side note. I know that Ashley knows I just had surgery at the Mayo Clinic. It'll be 2 weeks tomorrow. And this work has really taken a toll on my health as well. And the doctor said, you really would need no medications, and it's my stomach and all that kind of stuff if you just got out of the stress. But I'm not at this point wanting to do that. We run a homicide program too in our program, and we run a visitation center as well as the domestic violence program and the housing program. And I don't look at ways to get out. I look at ways how I can build in bigger. And that's what gets me into trouble, I think, with my health, is just like all of the extra pressure I put on myself. But I just know that we're just hitting the top of the iceberg. We're not reaching everybody. And there's so many more women that need our services, men, children, everybody that need those services. So I'm really grateful that Kimberly's out in DC and is prodding along and keeping us our movement in front of the legislators and helping us get that VOCA cap up and getting more money out there. We need survivors to speak out. And that's what I've always said, is we need survivors to speak out. My self-care is my staff, is to be able to see them taking on the baton, moving. And it's way different than what we did, Nancy and Kimberly and Maria, way different than when we first started this job years and decades ago. It's just completely, the laws have changed. Everything is just so much different. But I take self-care in knowing that there's other women like you out there that have experienced the same thing that I've experienced. And I look forward to talking to you guys additionally about self-care as historians in the field of domestic violence.
Yeah. Thank you so
And
much,
I-
Sherry. Nancy,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and thank you. So we have a soul care director at WomenatthecentrE Life, and she's really phenomenal. Her name is Bethany Heiser, but our staff meets every week for an hour or an hour and a half for a soul care session. It's just part of our team. So we do that 1 week, and then the following week we invite other projects to join us and people come from all over the world. So I just want to say, like, if you would be interested in something like that, there is something about that practicing, and she leads us through quiet meditations and calm and helps us look at some of our limiting beliefs. And sometimes we journal or we do yoga together, but it is really phenomenal. And to have that every week has just been phenomenal. So you're very welcome to join us, anyone who's on this call, and of course, each of you.
That's fantastic. Thanks for that invitation, Nancy. We have about 15 or so minutes left. And what I really want to, because, you've all given some really great advice about, how to self-care, what motivates you, some of the specific programs. But I imagine on this call, on this webinar right now, we have so many people who are starting their journey in the domestic violence field, or, maybe they've been in it for a while and just kind of need some, reminder of where we're heading. So I'd love each of you to kind of round out this conversation by just sharing, what are your hopes for the future? What would you hope that someone that's in this field right now, what is that torch that you're kind of carrying or handing off to someone else, to kind of keep this movement moving forward in the right direction? I'll take volunteers for who wants to go first. Kimberly?
Yeah, I would just want to contribute that I think we need to ground people in what the work is really about. A lot of people, unfortunately, really don't know the dynamics of the impact that domestic and sexual violence brings to a survivor. And I think that it's very important when we're addressing the issues that surround survivorship, we need to make sure that whoever's going to continue the work is clear on the message. The message needs not to be circumvented to what they want it to be. The message is the message. Violence is not wanted, it's not warranted, it's not needed against anyone, especially indigenous, very, very vulnerable people. And I think to eradicate what domestic and sexual assault brings, we need to work together. We need a whole of government approach. It takes more than just our small nonprofits or, our voices as individual leadership. It takes a village of people to get into the circle and say, what innovative approaches do we need to change here? Or what innovative approaches do we need to bring here to lift people up, to create our next community of leaders to take this forward? I can tell you, I talk to senators, I talk to mayors, I talk to people, in and around the DMV that are actually victims of violence, that are residing in these shelters. And I'm telling you, the voices that echo and into my ear every day are that we don't know what to do. We don't have money, we don't have resources. And how do we echo that to the right people? So I'm bringing the right people. I just started a podcast, Women's HQ Survivors Coffee Circle. And I'm bringing the politicians, I'm bringing the community leaders to the platform. And I'm saying to them, bring corporate leaders to the platform. I'm saying, this is my audience. These are the needs. Share with them how they can connect with you and how they can gain access to you to help with the resources that you have available for them. So yeah, I think that's very important for everybody to open dialogue and continuous communication.
Thank you. Sherry, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, I also want to encourage people that are in the field is to know what they're in for. I really liked when Kimberly had talked about some people just don't know what this is all about. I've had people start and then step aside because they said, I had no idea this was happening in our community. I want to go back to, I had a staff person say, I want to go back to being ignorant. I don't want to know that this is happening. And I'm like, then this is not the place for you. This is hard work. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're here for the safety net of all of these individuals that need our help. And yes, we want the new leadership. And I can tell, and I'm sure all of the other gals can tell too, when you have an employee that's really vested in the cause, that's really there for the purpose, that we want them to be there. And then there's others that, I just want my paycheck, kind of, or whatever. I really pour into those folks that are really vested in this work, because I too will retire sometime, probably within the next 5 years or so. And I really want to kind of the potter and the clay is to really form up those individuals so they have that. It's not like you said, like a shield of armor, but a shield of knowledge that this is tough stuff. Laws change, circumstances changes. Every time there's a new person in DC, in the White House, things change. You know, we just got to get used to it. And I have staff that don't like change, and I'm like, okay, then this is not it, because I'm very grateful that Kimberly's out there. I know somebody that's out there in doing that work, because politics play such a big role, and people will like, oh no, you know, but I think that young people, young career adults that are coming into this, we just want them to come in without rose-colored glasses, to come in and knowing that, you know, things happen. And I'd say after 35 years, I think I've seen the worst I've ever seen. And then the homicide team will get a new case and it's just twice as bad. So echoing again what the other gals have said, the state of our society right now is the most violent I've ever seen it in my career. And I'm not sure what that's from, but we want people to come in to be strong and to be able to hold up those that are in the darkest days of their lives. I can remember after the abduction of my daughter, I never thought there'd be anything worse than that. And so I think being a survivor gives all of us a little bit of edge on, yeah, I know what you're talking about from my experience. I can tell you from my experience, this is what I am. But we so want people to come. I don't know if I can just ask a question, if you guys are having trouble hiring people to get into the field, or if you're doing okay with that. I just, as an administrator, have a question.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences hiring people because of the money. Like I'm the grant writer, I'm the, fundraiser, I'm the community outreach person, I'm the, program director, I'm it all. I do need the help. And that's one of the biggest things that we face, because it's been COVID, and the COVID has set us back so much on, getting people to come out again and trust and get involved in the work. So, my innovative approaches have been to just start people off and, being volunteers, taking it from there, not having, pay, but, necessarily to be attached to an organization like ours, where we have visibility on Capitol Hill. We have those politicians' ears. I don't think there's anyone that would not want to be a part of that circle. So that's the way I'm navigating, the space right now, to just give them, the outlook of, this is what we're going to be doing in this field of work. And I want you to know it up front, because I don't want you to waste your time nor mine in, going through the hiring processes and then it doesn't work out. So we have to have people invested in not just the cause, but to want to do the work.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And Maria, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yes, and actually, yes, we had a hard time to hire people after the pandemic. I did advocate for them to get paid a little bit more because they the ones at the front line, they the one that take the risk. You know what, my colleagues talk about visibility and raising the voices, and that's great, and it's what we try to do here too. I think that, and I also want to add that we serve men too, because men are also victims of domestic violence. Maybe less quantity, but we do serve also males. And one of the agencies that start with that, and even people who thought like have the doubts, are they really victims? Well, we find out that they are too. So we, again, I'm gonna refer to my agency. We have a team of people working in grants. We have other people working on the visibility for our agency, the needs that we have. And it's always forever we need more money, because we have these great programs, but in order for us to keep having the programs, we need to have funding. So thank you for, everybody agree that visibility and take the word out and how we can make it sustainable, because we want to make sure that we hear, like someone mentioned, violence is even worse now than it was 30 years ago when I started working. He has a different face, and it don't discriminate whether it's a male, female, or any community has really. We also very proud we help the LGBT community, because sometimes they have the barriers that they can help them in other shelters. We're very proud to work with them too. So we like for their voices to raise, and people find more information and then be judgmental. And it's probably why we practice trauma-informed. We have practiced trauma-informed for the longest. We one of the shelters that really advocate for that, like work to cater where that person is at. So I think that just continue to do the work, continue to educate people. We also have some of the coordinators to go to the schools to just let the students know that there is violence, and also how to look for help, because years ago nobody heard, so nobody find out how to get help. But I think there's just more visibility now. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much. And Nancy, I'd love to hear from you as well, just talking about, what do you hope the people that are really, in the beginning or middle stages of their career, what torch do you want to hand off to them?
Oh, I feel like the work has just begun, right? Even with the 30 or 35 years, we've just begun this work, and it's beautiful to be able to be part of those icebreakers, like when a ship breaks the ice and then there's so much more to follow. I think that that coordinated community response that Kimberly is talking about, how do we draw all factors of our segments of our society into this work so we have a united message, one that brings hope for change and transformation. Our survivors' voices, continuing to hear them. I feel that in the 30 years, I have been really sustained in my life, my personal life, my heartache. I have a heartache that I have a blended family of 5 children, and now I have 20 grandchildren. And the heartache is to understand the kind of world they live in, the kind of messages they get in the media and just in society around interpersonal relationships. And then what we know with neuroscience of how, because of my relationship, how they're impacted. And that by me getting safe and building community and getting healing, that doesn't necessarily transfer to them. That doesn't mean that they're safe and that they've got healing. And so the impact, if we could understand the impact of domestic violence on our future generations, is so huge, and it's broken my heart. And I think that we mustn't leave out the children. And encourage Maria, when you talk about going to the schools, how do we care for kids? How do we care for women in shelter and their children? And then what about the abusers? So I've been doing batterers treatment at an organization, and I'm a service provider myself. Those men and women in treatment almost unilaterally have witnessed abuse and been abused as children. And they have this repetitive behavior because of fight and flight, and their whole body is imprinted. And so we have demonized, for many good reasons, the actions of the behavior and the behaviors of perpetrators, but failed to see the personhood of an abuser. And I think to address this whole issue of domestic violence, there needs to be more funding for survivors. Absolutely. I can hire people all day long. I have the best team, in my opinion, and the best people around. But I have competitive employers. I have Microsoft and Google and people in my world, the IT world, that will pay like $50,000 to $150,000 more in a wage, right, than I'm able to pay. So I draw people who this is the work of their heart and they're willing to be paid less. And that's both good and bad, right? So anyways, the funding, we need a common message, right? That people matter. We matter. Every person matters. And we're living in a world as if other, that caste system, the hierarchy, that some people matter more than others. And it's just not a true message. So of course I could go on and on, but for the limitation of time, yeah. What about the children?
Well, thank you, Nancy. But thank you to everyone. We are at our time right now. So thank you, Sherry, Nancy, Kimberly, and Maria for being here today. And thank you to all of our panelists and to the entire domesticshelters.org team. This has been such an informative and inspiring event. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As a special treat to help us all decompress and spend some time on self-care after nearly 3 hours of learning, we are so excited to welcome Amy Stevens, a certified yoga instructor, healing touch certified practitioner, and advanced crystal master based in Scottsdale, Arizona, to lead us through a 15-minute chair yoga session. This short session is designed for a wide range of mobility levels and will leave you feeling refreshed and re-energized. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the Purple Ribbon Awards celebration in about 45 minutes. Now let's take a moment of self-care with Amy Stevens.
All right, so we are going to do our 15 minutes, get ourselves rocking and rolling. We'll use our chair in a little bit just to help our hip space, but I want you just to start by standing. And as you come up to standing, we're going to take our feet just a little bit wider, and we're going to reach the arms up overhead, grab your right hand with your left and give a pull over to your left, please. Good. And then come back up. Let's float the arms all the way down. And then up again with the arms. And now right hand reaching to your left wrist. And then give a pull. Taking a nice full breath, please. And next inhale, come back up. Float the arms back down. Good. And as you stand nice and tall, we're going to let the feet step out just a little bit wider. Give a bend to your right knee, as if your right knee is going to go towards the little toe side of your foot. Come back up. Give a bend to your left knee, and again, like it's going out towards the little toe side of your foot. Come back up. And then one more time each side. And just notice how the knees, how the thighs begin to activate. Okay. Either hands onto your hips. I'm going to turn sideways just to show you here. Hands either onto your hip space, or if you can, interlace your fingers behind your back. Now notice the immediate, how the shoulders want to drop forward. So just give a little lift, move the shoulder blades back and in. Let your arms start to move behind you. Now, if your shoulders are really tight, that's not appropriate, then just bring your hands back around to your waistline instead. But if you can, try to allow the shoulders to move back and in, but watch the position of your head. We don't want to push the chin forward like a turtle coming out of the shell. Try to push more into the back of your head and then lift the arms up one more bit. Good. With the feet still wide, let's start to hinge slightly forward. So this is engagement of your back, your legs, your belly. Your breath should be nice and full, please. Next inhale, come back up. Release your hands, step your feet together, give it a shake out. Good. All right, from here, arms reach wide. We're going to bring the right elbow on top of the left and try to reach around towards your opposite shoulder. Good. Take in a deep breath, please. And now if you can, lift your elbows up and just help loosen up any tightness into the neck, the shoulders. Feel how your upper back broadens. Good. Allow the elbows to lower. Sweep the arms out wide to your side once again. And now left elbow on top of right. Reach around. Try to stack the elbows up as best as you can, wrapping your fingers around, and then try to lift the elbows up away from your chest. Good. Deep breath in. Good. Next exhale, release. Arms reach out wide one more time. This time, right hand behind your head or even in behind your neck. Take your left hand up to your right elbow, and you may have to reposition a little bit here. And then walk your right fingers down, either to the base of your neck, or if you can, start to even walk down in between the shoulder blades. Good. Let your breath deepen, please. You're getting into the tricep of your right arm. You may feel it some into your armpit. Just make sure you're not straining into your neck. So allow the chin to soften down. Let's bring the breath in full one more time. Empty it out slowly. Good. Inhale, both arms up. Sweep them down. Pause. Notice the adjustments around the shoulders, how different right side feels now versus left. And now we're going to lift the left arm up. Bring your forearm behind. Good. Take your right hand over to your left elbow, and then just take your time and let your left hand gradually move down. Sometimes one shoulder really has a lot more freedom than the other, so just please take your time. Notice how tall you're standing. Feel the top of your head trying to draw up towards the ceiling even more. And notice even what that does for your spine. Take in another full breath, please. Empty it slow. Let's go one more time. Full inhale. Good. Empty it out. Next inhale gently. Arms reach up. Allow them to come back down. And relax. Okay, so next up, we're going to use either a desktop, a piece of furniture, whatever you happen to have that's not going to be moving around. I'm going to try to do this so that you can see me pretty well here. So what we're going to do is take both hands to face the desk, turn your fingers either out a quarter of a turn, or turn your fingers all the way to point towards you. So we're going out with the rotation and then back to point towards your body. We want to try to get the wrists, the palms of your hands to come down. And that can be a little tricky. So as you're getting in there, notice what that experience is. So go ahead and stay down onto the surface. Notice that experience in through the wrist. So this is your carpal tunnel down here where wrist and forearm meets. And if you look, notice, is there a V shape in that area? So that even gives you an idea if your carpal tunnel is still active and doing its thing. So if it's flat all in that area, then the carpal tunnel needs to be built up and strengthened once more. Let your breath grow full again. For some people, this is super easy. For others, if you're doing a lot of repetitive work, this can be incredibly tight. So just take your time, allowing the wrists and allowing the forearms to stretch out and the palms of the hands rest down. Good. Come back up. Slowly unwind. Give them a shake because they're going to talk to you now. Give a little spin into the wrists. Beautiful. All right. Find your chair now. And just make sure that you're secure in your chair, especially if you have a wheeled chair that you're using. Make sure you're secure in the chair. We are going to lift the right ankle, place it up onto the left thigh. And just let your knee rock a little bit side to side to help loosen up any tightness into the hip, the outer thigh. This is the pose I tell people to try to incorporate every single day. This can help out so much with hip and back pain. All right, from here, we're going to bring the legs to neutral. Go ahead and start to lean slightly forward. Now, as you lean slightly forward, notice, does the right knee want to jerk and pull up, or can it relax down? Is there length across your spine, or is more of your hinge from either the mid-back or from your chin dropping towards collarbones? Try to keep your spine as long as you can and then create that hinge forward. Take in another deep breath, please. See if you can lean into it one more bit. Good. Next inhale, bring yourself up. Let's unwind. Just give a little rub into the knee to help loosen up any tightness that may be into that space. Pick up now your left ankle. Place it up and over on top of your right thigh and just give a little rock side to side. Sometimes this is enough. Like this helps to release enough without overdoing. Good. Allow your breath to deepen once more. Good. Bring your legs to neutral, and if it's comfortable on this side, start to hinge forward. And as you hinge forward, notice, does the knee want to pull up? Can you feel the knee relax down? Is the hip super tight on your left side, or is it more flexible? Full inhale, please. Deep, deep, deep. Empty it out gently. Let's go one more hinge forward. Take your time. So just taking a few minutes out of your day to give yourself this opportunity to balance out. You can do it first thing in the morning, laying in bed. You're on your back. You put your ankle up onto your thigh. Give a hug of your grounding leg in towards your chest. So instead, what we're doing is folding forward to bring the torso down and closer in to create that flexibility into the hip. Good. Come back up. Good. Unwind. Let's interlace the fingers now. Push your palms forward. As you do that, point your thumb straight down towards the ground. And then we're going to lift the arms up while still keeping the thumbs active. And notice how different that is for your arms, your shoulders. So the thumbs are pointing more forward at this point versus down to the ground. Good. And then tip the thumb sides of your hands up a hair towards the ceiling, and notice what that does into your wrists. Starts to give you a little more power into your wrist. One more inhale. Exhale. Slowly lower the arms down. Good. Unthread your fingers, shrug your shoulders, move them back and down. Shrug the shoulders up, back, and down. Turn your head slightly to the right. Bring your chin towards right armpit. Take in a deep breath. Empty it slow. Next inhale, lift your head back up. Sit up tall once again. Turn your head slightly left. Bring your chin towards armpit. Good. Lift your head back up. Sit up tall. This time, turn your head to the right. Bring your chin parallel to shoulder. Try to keep your left shoulder blade strong so your left shoulder does not pull forward. Good. Next inhale, come back around to neutral. Sit up a little taller. Now turn your head as you empty breath. We're turning to the left. Good. Bring your head forward once again. All right, so to top it all off, we're going to wake up our lungs, wake up the brain, and we're going to do our 3 quick inhales, 1 long exhale. So 3 inhales through the nose, really quick, 1 long exhale through the mouth. Here we go. Good. So that is your bonus to not have to have caffeine for the rest of today. So again, remember those 3 quick inhales, the long exhale through the mouth. You should not feel dizzy after doing that. So giving yourself that quick boost of oxygen into your bloodstream, and that should help you out. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy.